ACMi productions are only made possible with your support. Visit patreon.com/ACMi to learn how you can help.
Good evening, everybody. It is 6:30 p.m. on the nose. It is December 5th, 2024, for people watching on video later. This is the regular meeting of the Arlington School Committee. I'm Paul Schlickman. I'm the chair. We have a full house of school committee members tonight, so we do not have to go by the roll call rules. We can do voice votes because nobody will be remote, which is a good thing. First up is public comment. For members of the public who wish to address the committee, there will be 30 minutes of public comment. If you'd like to sign up to speak, either remotely or by Zoom or in person, you must email eDiggins by 6 p.m. Thursday, the date of the meeting. Depending on how many people sign up, time allotments may be reduced, but will not exceed 3 minutes each. If the number of people sign up exceeds what could be reasonably done in 30 minutes, the number of speakers may be capped, or speaking times may be reduced at the discretion of the chair. All requests to speak received after the date and time indicated will be invited to speak in the next school committee regular meeting. We've had a practice of people signing up multiple people from families in order to extend speaking time. I'm going to seek to discourage that unless the members of the family disagree with each other, then I will entertain that happily. So the first two speakers will be Natalie and Jonathan Rabinowitz. I will invite them both up to the microphone, and I will give you 4 minutes instead of the usual 3 to divide between the two of you. Unless, of course, you disagree with each other, then I'll give you 3 minutes each. So,
Is this our microphone?
That's that microphone, yes. You can sit next to each other.
Okay. I didn't even think about expanding speaking time. We're just coming from different perspectives.
Well, are we going to
But we
disagree with
align
each
on the
other?
same-
Then we can
no.
divide it up.
It's okay.
But
So,
names and address, street
Okay, go
address
ahead.
for the record, please.
Sorry?
Names and street address for the record.
Jonathan Rabinowitz, 81 Thesda Street in Arlington.
Natalie Rabinowitz, same address.
Go for it.
I will just use a brief bit of time to basically set Natalie up. I come to you as both a parent and as an educator myself. I'm in my 23rd year of working with middle schoolers, 6th grade in particular. And I would like just to set the floor for Natalie to address the school committee on 2 counts. And I also want to thank you for listening to us. I really, really do appreciate that. The first thing I want to say is that we have as a father, we have a middle school, a 5th grader who is high achieving and quite unengaged at school. And one thing that we would like to put out to the committee is a sense of the need for teachers to be supported, to further engage and to challenge and to inspire kids who might come in at the higher level of achievement and want something more. As a middle school teacher, I'd like to just to detail the need for the fact that kids change so much between 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade that to pigeonhole them or to close off pathways to academic opportunity at 6th grade that might be open in 9th grade seems to me to be a bit illogical. And I wanted just to set that parameter for Natalie to address the committee further.
So I watched the last committee meeting and came to express support for the ideas that were presented for identification of options for acceleration and extension of academics in Arlington Public Schools. And just to say, I appreciate and support the efforts being put into expanding pathways to high school math, and also to request that it doesn't stop there, that access to advanced learning should be a priority for APS, not starting in 6th grade or 7th grade or high school, but throughout the school system. Because APS needs to acknowledge that there are students in need of advanced learning services in every school from every demographic that are currently underserved in the school system, and teachers don't receive the same supports for those students that they do for students with other needs. And he mentioned our vested interest because of our older child, but our middle child, our older child is in 7th grade. He falls solidly into the progressing category, and he opted into 7A math because his friends did. and this is the first year that he says math is hard. He works for it, and as a result, he's actually thriving and doing better, and he's engaging in school and likes 7th grade, which sort of surprised us, but also made us a little sad that 7th grade was the first opportunity for challenge for him. So I guess I'm requesting that ensuring equity and excellence is sought in all grades. The Math 6 bypass may be an imperfect advancement option because kids who need math challenge need to go deeper and not just faster. However, increasing access to accelerated learning in 6th grade, however, this is accomplished by creating a transparent and unbiased assessment for entry that accommodates more students exceeding curriculum standards. It offers a low-hanging fruit because that's already in place. More dashed lines for math classes, and it is an excellent discussion to continue in another low-hanging fruit. And in addition, I request that we expand the relationship with the continuum of services for advanced learning through DESE, which may be able to offer resources for equitable opportunities for advanced learning services to our school systems and offer more Arlington kids more opportunities. And with that, I'd just like to thank you for your hard work on behalf of our children.
Thank you very much. Next up will be Wenmin Chan, who will be followed by Ashutosh Gupta, so please be ready to come. Wenmin Chan, please come to the microphone, name and street address for the record.
Sure. My name is Wenmin Chen, and I reside at 136 Wright Street in Arlington. I can go. Okay. I'm here as a parent who has seen firsthand the impact that academic acceleration can have on a student. My son has directly benefited from these opportunities, and I'm speaking tonight to support the group of parents advocating for the district to expand such options for all students. When my son was in kindergarten here in Arlington, he was an advanced learner. So despite being very unhappy and struggling with boredom, the school insisted that skipping a grade was not an option for him. So I was told it simply wasn't possible in Arlington School District. However, we were lucky, so we went away for a 6-month sabbatical in Ithaca, New York. The school there actually approached us and offered for my son to skip 1st grade, something I never expected that could happen. I mean, I just gave up at that point. I didn't even bother to ask the school. I was very shocked that a school would offer such opportunity, especially after we were told that no, so firmly at the Arlington school. But when we returned to Arlington, I was relieved to see that the Dallin principal actually honored the decision and allowing my son to skip 1st grade. And then at Gibbs, my son was able to skip 6th grade math. Now, as a 7th grader, he's taking 8th grade math at Addison and is thriving as an A+ student with perfect scores on the MCAT for ELA and near perfect score for math. And then beyond academics, he stands out as one of the top players on his soccer team, despite being the youngest member. He also shines in music, serving as the first chair violist in the 7th and 8th grade combined orchestra, both regular and chamber orchestras. Now, this experience has shown me just how important it is to provide students with opportunities to move at their own pace, especially for those who are capable of handling more challenging materials. My son is just one example, and I'm aware that many other students in Arlington will benefit from having the option to accelerate in subjects like math and others where they show strength. So I urge you today to consider expanding these opportunities so more students can experience the same growth and success my son has. After skipping grade, he's much happier. I mean, I'm sure he can, do even more. But unfortunately, Arlington is not providing these opportunities for him. So I would like to see that the school district providing these opportunities for kids. Doing so is not just about pushing kids to move faster. It's about allowing them to thrive and engage with their education in a way that works best for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Ashutosh Gupta will be followed by Federico Fraschetti.
Hi, my name is Ashutosh Gupta, and I reside in 161 Sylvia Street in Arlington. And I am the father of a 8th grader at APS. First of all, I would like to thank the committee for listening to our concerns over the last few meetings and regarding the math pathways. In terms of the pathways itself, we have discussed it in last few meetings. Specifically for my son, the current pathways offered at APS are not serving his needs. He took the APS advanced math test in the 5th grade during COVID times, and it was done from home, so it was an imperfect environment for the test itself, but it has impacted his whole middle school experience because he wasn't selected by the APS. Despite that, he has been able to compete in the different math tournaments, including the math counts, and he has represented APS or his Gibbs and Otterson Middle School in the math counts. And he's doing well and excelling in all the other objective tests, including the MCAS. I also would like to point out that he has consistently requested to be moved to the advanced math class at every grade level from 6th, 7th, and including 8th grade. And it was consistently denied by the APS because, as shared by other parents, it's just not possible at APS, which is his whole middle school experience is defined by one test that was done at the 5th grade level during COVID times. If nothing changes, it will also define his high school experience as well. And I would also like to point out that because of this, he has to do 2 homeworks, one for his regular school homework from APS, as well as the private classes he has to take because the opportunities are not available to him at APS, which has affected his ability to take other extracurricular activities because he just doesn't have enough time to do multiple homeworks, which is what he has to do. In terms of my request for the APS, first and foremost, I would request APS to allow students to take multiple math courses starting from grade 9 instead of grade 10, which will, in his specific case, which will help him to overcome his the denial of the advancement opportunities which he has requested over the last 3 years and which was denied by the APS. So by allowing him to take multiple math courses at grade 9, he would be able to make up for the opportunities, somewhat make up for the opportunities that he wasn't able to take because of the arbitrary policy of not able to be moved to advanced maths in grade 7 and 8.
Thank you. Your time has expired.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to my concerns.
Thank you. Federico Fraschetti will be followed by Raisa Karasek.
The plan was to let my daughter speak, but she couldn't come tonight, so...
Okay, thank you.
Maybe next time.
Raisa Karasek. Name and address for the record, please.
Hello, my name is Raisa
The
Karasik.
microphone.
Raisa Karasik. I live on 50 Trowbridge Street. I was at the last committee's meeting. I found discussions that happen about mathematics extremely interesting, and now I would love to it using my experience. So during the last meeting, I learned that Arlington High School actually offers to take physics for 4 years, which I think it's fantastic, but I'd love to make this option accessible to everyone, not just students who were able to bypass Math 6. I also want to advocate to allow interested students to take algebra and geometry in middle school, because from my experience, this was needed to set up students for success in engineering careers and other STEM careers, if that's what they're interested in. Now, let me explain why this is necessary using my experience. So I actually have a PhD in physics, and majority of my education is from US. I did US high school, college, and graduate school. But initially, I started my school in Soviet Union, and so I think I'm well positioned to compare and contrast education in both countries. So contrary to your expectations, I found US high school extremely hard because I found that my classes went way too fast. So in comparison, in Soviet Union, kids start biology in 5th grade, and they continue learning biology all the way till the end of school, which is 11 grades over there. So it gives them 7 years of biology, 5 years for physics, and 4 years of chemistry. And for each course, for each science, they actually do only 2 classes per week. Where in my high school, you could get only 1 year per science, If you wanted more, you could take APs that would give you 2 years of each of the sciences, and you would do 4 classes per week. And the interesting part is that the amount of material that they cover is the same or very similar. So the only difference is space. And so what I learned is that I got a secret advantage. I started hard subjects early and I could go slow. And because of that, I was able to get a PhD in physics. And in college, I saw that my peers with just US education really struggled with introductory physics. And many of them had to drop physics major or could not get into engineering school because they just couldn't keep up with the pace. I think they were just as talented as I was. It's just they could solve the problems similar, just as I could, but they were much more slowly. And my secret advantage allowed me to keep up with the pace with college education. So I think Arlington High School has an opportunity to make careers in science and STEM much more accessible by just changing curriculum and allowing interesting students to start early. And I also would like to add that I think this will help with equity, because if you look, or when I looked in Soviet Union, STEM careers had a lot more women, and my experience with US is that I was unique. There were very few women in physics and engineering, and I think it's because you have to give everyone an opportunity and start teaching them early.
Thank you. Next up is Dennis Grudkowski. Please admit him in the Zoom. And Dennis, good.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Dennis
Grudkowski, please.
Dennis Grudkowski, 57 Wollaston Avenue. Last week I needed to leave before you spoke about the math pathways, and I listened online. I'm hopeful after hearing the talk that the ball has begun rolling. I recall hearing that there was to be a meeting the following day with the math department, and if there was discussion related to this topic, I would like to hear some feedback soon. And I clicked on an agenda for the 12/18 subcommittee meeting, and I noticed that they'll be discussing math pathways, and I hope to hear about that discussion as well as soon as possible. It's exciting, and I appreciate the focus. I hope this talk yields a solution for the older and younger APS students that gets them excited about their math studies before they graduate. If that's what they need and want, we know that the parents who you have heard support that in their children's desire. I do want to address one of the comments that was made regarding college admissions and kids being fine. First, these kids are beyond fine. They're exceeding the math curriculum after all. Fine is how my kids describe their school day. I don't like the word fine to describe this situation at all. What is not fine is that my kids are in this frustrating situation, and these rigid pathways are not fine. My 6th grader, Dimitri, who spoke here 2 meetings ago, has advanced his IXL numbers into the 900s. It sounds fine, but actually it's not, because he learns the above curriculum material via his own methods. I'm concerned he's wasting his time, since he may not be learning it the 7th or 8th or 9th grade ways, the way he did to score well in the bypass exam, but was deducted points for not describing his work the 6th grade way. I bet the way we learned math is not the way you teach it now, but it serves our needs for better or for worse. As far as MIT is concerned, there are problems there too. I heard that MIT will offer families a certain financial parameters full tuition. I can imagine a scenario where a family meets those financial parameters. Family has a kid who is great at math and science, but didn't pass a test in 5th grade for no good reason. Now that student's in 10th grade, and what if the student uses his math class as a free class because his 10th grade Algebra 2 class is a review and isn't being taught any new material? What if a student from a town other than Arlington got accepted into MIT, beating out the kid from Arlington because the other town's math curriculum had more responsive pathways and allowed them to take the advanced physics classes that use the advanced mathematics? Because remember, we're applying to MIT, what we were speaking about last time, and that seems important to them, I think. If that happened, it wouldn't be fine to me at all. These students work hard, and I hope they don't need to jump through hoops and do things like summer school to allow them the classes they're suited for. When I was a young person in school, you did summer school when you were struggling to learn material, not because you were excelling in your learning. That sounds discouraging to me. The summer is a good time to develop the whole student that we talk a lot about, I think. It's not for more APS classes. It's for college visits, for working, it's for having fun. Thanks.
Thank you. Your time has expired. Thank you for being with us tonight, all the participants in public comment. The public comment period has now concluded. We have one, now we have both AHS reps with, Arlington High reps with us, Zach Fahn and Leo Fritsch. Now, I note that Zach has to leave by 7:45 p.m., but if you'd like to report to us as to what's happening over the high school or anything else of concern.
All right, so first thing, so winter sports has started, so sports like basketball, hockey, swim, track, and cheer. We don't have the AHS gym, so basketball is playing their home games at Waltham and practicing at Ottoson.
It's also a very exciting time for HS because we had a break not too long ago and only 2 weeks until winter break, so we're all building up for that. And we're also, as a senior, it's also very exciting because we've started to see people get start to commit to their colleges, so it's also a very exciting time for that. And then we started our first wellness day today, which is like a bunch of workshops that every student participates in. And then we also have a ton of winter events that the student council is planning for, including just like gingerbread contests and like fun spirit weeks.
Yeah, the staff appreciation committee on student council is making handwritten cards for all staff members to deliver before winter break. So that's pretty much it.
Okay, thank you. And remember, you are full participants in this meeting, so anytime you want to speak up, please raise your hand and get in the queue.
Thank you.
I'm going to take something out of order here because I see that Mr. Cullinane is with us. So we're going to go to the second read and possible vote on the gift by Mr. Cullinane. Superintendent Holman, do you have a presentation or some remarks to begin with?
I do not have a presentation or anything to add. We had discussed this at the last meeting. The Cullinane family has proposed a donation that would allow us to begin. We'd have a lot of work to do to figure out how to use the funds, but that would allow us to do some work in the Millbrook Park area because that park has a lot of meaning to him and his family. They've offered a generous donation to the Arlington Public Schools that require a vote of the school committee for us to move forward with making some plans for that park. So,
would any members of the finance subcommittee or the high school building committee like to speak on this? Whoops.
My time is up.
Yeah.
That was quick, Paul. We were off to a good start.
We're trying to get through. There's a long agenda. We got to get through the meeting, you know.
No, we think it's a wonderful gift, and we thank Mr. Cullinane and his family for their generosity. So I move acceptance of the gift.
Motion by Mr. Thielman, seconded by Dr. Allison Hampy. Any further discussion on this wonderful gift? All in favor? Dr. Allison Hampy? I said no. Okay. Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's a unanimous vote. Mr. Cullinane, thank you so very much. This is a wonderful thing you're doing for Arlington.
My pleasure, and thank you. And we look forward to making this something really great. And it's just a pleasure to be part of this. And I might add, the whole Zoom and the room is extraordinarily clear and well done. So, and to listen to these people pushing, you know, for even more difficult courses is quite interesting. So. Anyhow, we'll pursue this to hopefully a very positive conclusion, and thank you very much for approving it.
Thank you.
thank you.
Yeah, maybe we'll put a calculus tree in the park. We now go to the MAFLA Teacher of the Year and CAM Excellence in Teaching Awards. Superintendent.
All right, would Ms. Hogan and Ms. Holt please come up for a moment? It is my,
Please come sit at the table.
We're gonna embarrass you for a second, come on.
All right, I'm already embarrassed.
Okay. So we want to start out today with a little bit of celebration of some of our spectacular educators, and then Ms. Carney is going to speak a little bit about some of the great work going on in world language very briefly, because we have a lot of presentations tonight. But I wanted to take a moment to recognize Luna Hogan for earning the MAFLA Teacher of the Year. It used to be the Mass Foreign Language Association, but now they just call themselves MAFLA, apparently. Okay. So
Takes
the
a while to
MAFLA,
get there.
that's what it is. Foreign Language Association's Teacher of the Year Award. This is a very prestigious award, and we are, of course, we're not surprised that Luna earned it, and we'll be celebrating this achievement with and for her over the next several months. But wanted to say an official congratulations. As well, we learned that the Classical Association of Massachusetts offered an Excellence in Teaching Award to Abby Holt. Both of these teachers are at Ottoson. They teach Mandarin and Latin, and we're so thrilled to have them on our staff. So congratulations to Abby and Luna, and I give it to the committee. They'd like to echo.
Any questions or comments from the committee?
We should give a standing ovation.
I'm sure I can speak for the whole school committee in saying we appreciate your service and your good work to the students of Arlington. We're grateful that you chose to work with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate you too.
Oh, that was well played.
Middle school world languages next.
We thought this would be a good opportunity to give you a little bit of an update about some of the work going on in world language, and so we went ahead and added that to the agenda. I will pull up Ms. Carney's slides, and once I do that, you're welcome to get started.
Okay, I'm setting a timer. So good evening, I'm Dawn Carney, the Director of World Languages. I'm delighted to be here tonight to fill you in a little bit about what happens in the middle grades, world languages. When these awards, when we shared the news with Dr. Holman, she was like, hey, this is a great opportunity to celebrate, microphone, to celebrate the teachers and learn a little bit from you about middle grades world languages. So the folks at the middle grades really have been dedicated to their own learning in service of improving student learning. Everything that I'm going to say is actually applicable to grades 6 through 12, but I'm really happy to focus on the middle grades tonight. I do want to say we will not be seeing all of the slides that I sent in the packet to the school committee because it is way too long, but I felt really compelled to provide some context for you. And tonight I'm hoping to just show you some of what this looks like in world languages.
You should be able to hit the down button and it will
down button. Here we go. Okay, so we're going to dive right in. Grade 6. This is an example of the beginning of the year in grade 6. Right away, we have students, we want them to interact with the target language. We want them on their first days of language class to speak the language. We want them excited to come home and say, I spoke Mandarin, I spoke French, Spanish, and Latin. And this is an example of something we see in any sort of classroom, in any school in America. Kids at the beginning of the year make a name tag, so we know their names. But on this one, the flip side, there's what we call a chat mat. And it has all of this vocabulary that students will be using right away, getting to know each other. And it also has all the question words. So it empowers them to learn, and it gives them things at their fingertips so they don't have to wait to learn it before they can practice it. This is all because our classes take place primarily 90% or more in the target language. The exception there is Latin, but we do have, so students, we have the students speaking the language from the beginning. They don't get to 90% right away. Working. Next, back one. Okay. In world languages, we are developing and reinforcing literacy skills. This is an example of an authentic text. So we work with authentic text, which means that students are interacting with materials that are made for speakers of the language, not made for learners of the language. And the way that we do that is we only ask them to demonstrate understanding of what we know they can, what they can do developmentally and linguistically. So here there's a clip of a video that students watched about the Eiffel Tower, and it was accompanied by text. And this little snippet of what we ask kids to do, can they go and find these words that are in the text? We ask them to do that because we've taught them some strategies about how to look for cognates, use context. These are literacy skills that they have from their other subject areas as well. We ask them what kind of document they're looking at. So we're engaging them in using all of their skills in understanding what they're reading, to a certain degree. All of the words here, almost all of them are cognates, and the rest of them students could figure out by looking at the video, and they had the text to accompany it. Thanks. Okay, Latin, often referred to as not a spoken language, but not true in APS. Abby, one of the reasons why she was nominated for this award is she does so much work with spoken language in grades 6 through 8. And what this allows is the students to feel like they're more in line with their modern language counterparts, right? So they are speaking a language, they're protecting a tradition, they're continuing a tradition of keeping the Latin language alive. And what it does is it allows students to focus more on comprehension instead of literal translation all the time. Translation remains important in Latin, but the use of spoken Latin really changes the game for students. So here, this activity that you see on her agenda for the day is they were learning the names of classroom materials in Latin. Those are words they're going to need all year long, as she's saying, take out your book, get your pencils. And they're learning where they are in the classroom. This is what kids do at the beginning of the year. So they're practicing introducing themselves, asking where things are, which is things that they will need to do during the year. Next slide. Here, I think most everyone will recognize a bunch of some animals from the Brown Bear, What Do You See book. And that was the context for this lesson on colors in grade 6 Mandarin. While the focus of the lesson was colors, using this tool, it allowed the teacher to talk about so much more, which was to introduce animals, which students are sort of previewing what they would see in the next unit. Animal sounds is a tremendous hook for kids. We love learning all of the sounds for things in other languages. In the lower right there, you can see there's a picture and some sentence frames. So this is an example of directions, also with visual supports. So the first line across is saying, ask, and that's the symbol, her visual for teacher. The teacher will ask, what's this? Students will answer, it is. And I was in this teacher's classroom today. This visual was right up there again with the sentence frame that they were practicing for the day. And while we don't see it in all of the slides, visuals are a huge component of language instruction when we are using the target language. We use those to support meaning all of the time. Next slide. Yep. The text boxes here really say it all. In world languages about 10 years ago, there was a shift to using what we call can-do statements. And the purpose is to have the lesson objective incredibly clear to students, what they are doing, and in student-friendly language. So by the end of this class, I can have a basic conversation about these items here. Of course, they've learned some of them before, but they haven't had to put it all together until today. You'll also notice that the objective is communicative. So sometimes it's communicative in the receptive way. They might be listening or reading. Sometimes it's interpersonal, which is primarily spontaneous, not memorized conversation, or presentational writing. I just lost what I was going to say. Oh, the purpose, communicative objective means we're focused on the message, not on accuracy. So grammar and vocabulary are behind all of those things that kids have to do there, but the emphasis is on having a successful communication versus being accurate. We don't want students thinking, there's a right answer. I don't know what the answer is. I can't participate. It's whatever you can say is what we want you to say. We know we need to speak a language in order to learn to speak a language. You can't drive without driving. You can't swim without swimming. You can't speak without speaking. Next slide. This is an example. This is real life, every day, 7th grade. Post-its, pencil, smudge, scribbly, stuck on sideways. But this is such a beautiful example of learning in action. Students were expressing opinions or likes or dislikes. Again, 7th grade, beginning of the year, and right away using connector words. Connector words are a characteristic of intermediate level speech, so we start with our kids right away. Grade 6, grade 7, they're using connector words all of the time. In one round, students put up Post-its about what they liked or their opinion, like, I like Argentina because there's mountains. The second round, they either agreed or disagreed with the Post-it that they were reacting to. And again, they had to say why. And in some of them, they could just also do a reaction, which is like, are you serious? That country's not better than this country. And again, those are words that kids say all the time. When they're talking to each other in class, they're not using, beautiful sentences. They're using their everyday language. So we give them that language in Spanish in this example so that they can use it. Next one. This, we can't really see what is going on except for kids are around a table writing on a whiteboard. But this is another example of kids taking learning from an authentic text and using it right away. So in this classroom, this is Mandarin students in grade 8. They had worked with a text to acquire new vocabulary that related to the unit. And after working with that vocabulary, the teacher had them work together on creative writing. Being able to create with language is another hallmark of intermediate level speech. So we're pushing students there as soon as we can. And the target for the end of year, that's an appropriate target for these students for the end of the year. So they're working collaboratively so that they don't have to worry if they can't make a sentence by themselves, but they work together to put the new learning into a sort of more personal context, and it's more open-ended and creative. I went fast because I didn't want to run out of time. So what I hope that this shows is, these are examples of standards. They're examples of effective instructional practices. But instead of talking about them, I thought it was more helpful to show them. It also reflects an incredible amount of work on behalf of the teachers. They've engaged in curriculum review. They've engaged in peer observation, a tremendous amount of professional learning, both within the district and out of the district. Both Abby and Luna have presented at our state conference as well. They support each other. They work together to make world language learning successful and joyful for our kids here in Arlington. And I could not be prouder or more grateful to work with them.
Okay, questions or comments from the committee? What's a connector word?
Sorry?
What is a connector word?
Oh, a connector word. Conjunctions.
Oh, okay.
And, but, however.
Okay. Superintendent?
I'll just say that I think these are great examples of the ways that world language, in particular as a department, engages students in a lot of experiential and really high standard learning, which is aligned with what we consider deeper learning to be, and that is very deeply engaging for students, and it shows. Of course, it shows insofar as our teachers are being nominated for awards. So congratulations, and thank you for all of the excellent work you've been doing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Next up will be Hardy Bishop School Improvement Plans. So we're tag teaming. It's a beautiful thing.
Yes, we are.
That is a beautiful thing.
So I will pull this up and get started with the comment that, as you recall, at the beginning of the year, one of the things we were considering doing were combining some of the elementary school presentations. The elementary school principals who have gone so far had decided to separate those presentations, maybe for ease of getting the work done. We can revisit that at a later date, but these two principals decided to do it together, which was good timing because we have 4 schools doing school improvement plans tonight, so doing just 3 presentations made sense. I know that Ms. Leiner and Ms. Saunders, our principals at Bishop and Hardy, respectively, will be talking about specific work happening at each of their buildings during the presentation, but they're going to present together, and then when you do questions, it'd be helpful if you differentiated who you were asking or whether you were asking both of them. So, hold on one second, let me get this started. And if you use the slide advancer and hit the down button, it should go for you if you want to drive, or you can just tell me to hit the button and I'll advance the slide.
We'll try.
Go for it.
We'll see. Okay, so first of all, thank you so much for having us both tonight. I'm very excited to be able to share some of the fantastic work that's been happening at Bishop over the past year. With me tonight are a few people that I'd like to introduce. First, our new assistant principal, Kathleen Early, who started this summer and has made just a big positive impact at Bishop already, and I'm looking forward to seeing her impact throughout the year. Also, we have Emily Dieter, one of our math coaches, Maria Amato. Give a wave. Take credit for being here. Literacy coach, and Trisha White, our librarian. All 3 are a part of our instructional leadership team at Bishop. And I appreciate all of them taking the time this evening in support of our school. I'm very lucky to have such a dedicated staff at Bishop.
Thank you, Eva. And so being new to the Hardy School and to Arlington, I just started on July 1st. I'm a brand new principal. I'm very grateful to have Peggy Satsoulis as our assistant principal. She's here with us tonight, and she's been in Arlington even longer, but at the Hardy School for over 10 years. Also supporting the Hardy School tonight, we have our special education coordinator, Louisa Popkin, and our amazing administrative assistant, Mary Bella Rose, is here as well.
It worked. Okay, so I feel very fortunate. I know this is different than the other elementary presentations, but I feel very fortunate to have been able to collaborate with Ms. Saunders on this presentation. While each of the elementary schools are unique in some aspects, we all share common goals, successes, and areas of need. Tonight, Gretchen and I worked together to build an agenda that we felt captured some of the important aspects of our school's profile. We will speak about some of our MCAS data and the work being done to support all students' success. Our school improvement plan goals will be reviewed with a look at some of the highlights for the year. And we will end with discussing what the future looks like for both of our buildings. Okay. Now it's not working. Oh, no. Sorry. Oh,
Needed to warm up.
I'm sorry. I'm not driving well tonight. Okay. So to begin with, we'd like to introduce our schools with just a broad overview. So Bishop has 378 students and 56 full-time staff and a number of shared or part-time staff. It's full of rich traditions, very supportive PTO, a building of wonderful teachers and staff, many of whom have worked at Bishop for many years. And we have high academic and behavioral expectations and provide support and care to all students. Respect, responsibility, and regard for others are our core values and help guide our conversations around school-wide expectations.
If it's easier for me to just
yeah,
take
thank
go,
you.
I can.
It's, yeah, jumping. Okay, thank you. As far as our demographics go, just a couple highlights. We have about 50 students for whom English is not their first language and approximately 90 high-need students. Our population of white students is comparable to the district's average, yet African American and Hispanic populations are slightly lower than the district's average. There are more students who identify as multi-race, non-Hispanic than any of our other non-white groups at Bishop. It's always exciting to see, taste, and feel the diversity at Bishop during our cultural fest in the spring. I encourage you to come if you've never come before. We also have a display area in the library where we have flags representing all the different countries that Bishop students and families are from.
The Hardy School includes 382 students, 68 full-time staff, and 13 part-time or shared staff members. Our school includes a support and learning center for students who may require one-to-one small group instruction and/or a substantially separate classroom environment. The Hardy School was built in 1925, so we're very excited about our 100th anniversary coming up, which we plan to celebrate in the spring. Safe, kind, and responsible are values that have been adopted by the Hardy Elementary School. These values are woven into all aspects of the Hardy community. Slide, please. Here are our student enrollment demographics for the Hardy School. You can see that 32% of our student population falls into the high needs category, which encompasses all of these other focal groups, including first language not English, 17.5%, English language learners, 7.3%, low income, 11.7%, and our most significant focal group being students with disabilities at 19.1%. The racial and ethnic makeup of the Hardy School is very similar to the Bishop School, and you can see it there.
All right, well, jumping into some of our MCAS data. While we know that MCAS is just one assessment in the year of a student, we are really very proud of the scores that our Bishop 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders earned on the 2024 MCAS. We continue to have a accountability rating of 96%, which speaks to the rigorous teaching in the building daily. Bishop far exceeds the state percentages of students who are meeting and exceeding the standard. 76% of our students in math and 70% of our students in ELA in grades 3 through 5 met or exceeded the standard. And in 5th grade, for science, 83% of our students were meeting or exceeding the standard, which is an extremely high score. While we can certainly credit the efforts of our teachers in those grade levels for much of the success of their students, I would also credit their kindergarten, 1st, and 2nd grade teachers for building their foundational skills to be able to perform well on this type of assessment. Additionally, we have a thoughtful and comprehensive Tier 2 reading and math intervention program, which also helps to strengthen student skills in those areas. These graphs show the discrepancy between our IEP and non-IEP students in their student growth percentiles in ELA and math, and then the average scaled scores for grade 5 in science, because of course they only take it in 5th grade to start. There are no student growth percentiles for that. Because narrowing the achievement gap is one of our goal areas, Ms. Saunders and I thought it was important to look at how our students have been trending over time. So from 2019 to last year, 2024. While I'm pleased with the growth of both groups of students, both IEP and non-IEP, we would like to see the student growth percentiles for our students on IEPs be higher. We will continue to work in our grade level ACE meetings with our curriculum coaches and teachers to address the needs of students on IEPs to ensure our Tier 1 practices help students continue to make more growth.
And here we have Hardee's 2024 accountability rating for MCAS and MCAS performance. 88% of students at the Hardee School in grades 3, 4, and 5 met or exceeded targets. Our accountability percentile is 92. And here these images represent the 2019 to 2024 trend lines for ELA achievement, math achievement, and science achievement. In spring of 2024 for ELA, 65% of our students met or exceeded the expectation with an average scaled score of 508 and an SGP of 61.8, which was an increase over the previous year. In the area of mathematics, 69% of students met or exceeded expectations with an average scaled score of 510 and an SGP of 57.5, which again was an increase from the previous year. And on the 5th grade science exam, 75% of students met or exceeded expectations with an average scaled score of 519. And as Eva mentioned, there's not SGP information because it's only taken in 5th grade. And here are our student growth percentiles from 2019 to 2024, comparing for just ELA and math, because that's the information we have available. Comparing students on IEPs, the lower turquoise line, against students who are not on IEPs. So while we are quite happy with the trend upward of these student growth percentiles, we still feel a significant urgency over the growing achievement gap between our students on IEPs versus non-IEPs.
All right, so we wanted to take a few minutes to review the 4 school improvement plan goals. These should absolutely look familiar, as many of our elementary colleagues have the same similar goals. So Bishop, goal 1 focuses on decreasing the achievement gap through the implementation of our new EL curriculum and continuing to use universal screening assessment to identify students who may need supplemental reading support. This is something that we spend a great deal of time in our ACE meetings working with our literacy coach, Ms. Amato, and our reading department following our DIBEL screeners. Goal 2 focuses on Tier 1 instructions, specifically around deepening academic discourse among students in order to increase belonging and engagement. And this year we will be doing specific walkthroughs to gauge how we're doing as a school in this area. Goals 3 and 4 are focused on belonging for students and families. So for students, this includes the work of our instructional leadership team with empathy interviews and equity learning walks that I'll speak about later. Also continuing to expand our PBIS, or positive behavioral interventions and support systems at Bishop. And then for families, this includes increasing communication with families and including them in our empathy interviews to gain a better understanding of their personal experiences at Bishop.
And here are the Hardy strategic goals. Our first academic goal is that all grade levels will fully implement the EL curriculum's learning targets to increase student achievement and engagement among all students. We will specifically focus on students with IEPs as we unpack learning targets and empower our students to assess their own progress towards targets in order to address the existing literacy gap in ELA. Our second strategic academic goal is that we will close the achievement gap in foundational literacy skills between students with disabilities and students without disabilities by implementing a comprehensive, multi-tiered system of support approach. The Hardy School will decrease the percentage of students with disabilities performing below grade level in foundational literacy by 20% within 2 years. Our culture and climate goal states that we will improve belonging for all students as defined by being understood as a person, supported by adults, respected by other students, and having a general feeling of belonging. Our family engagement goal states that we will improve belonging for all families through establishing stronger communication practices, providing authentic ways for celebrating the rich diversity of our school community, and developing welcoming practices for newcomers.
All right, so this is the fun part. We get to highlight a few things at each of our schools. So a few of the school-wide highlights at Bishop include staff-created and led committees. This year we have 6 committees that were born out of gathering feedback from teachers and staff around areas of interest, and they're listed on the slide. Co-leaders for the committees were identified and meeting times were scheduled during our Wednesday early release time. Already, I can share that committee work can be felt in our school, particularly from the wellness, assembly, gardening, and green team, and PBIS committees. It's been a very nice way to build more teacher leadership opportunities and allow school time to do some of the important school culture work. And if we continue this model into the future, I'm hoping that even the committee focus might change based on the interest and needs of the staff. Our ILT has been working on empathy interviews and identifying students and focal groups who can provide a more detailed lens into their experiences at Bishop. So with the help of the DEIBJ department, Bishop has been able to gain more traction this year in implementing the interviews and extracting information about students' experiences from them. And we hope to include parents' voice in interviews this year as well. Also, the ILT has been working on equity walkthroughs, which you'll see in the third bullet there. And the purpose of these walkthroughs of classrooms is to gain information on practices that are used in classrooms that promote equity. The ILT is using a tool that allows the observer to look for specific equitable practices. For example, putting student work on the walls, like the picture seen on the slide showing the 4th grade poems that were written during the first ELA module. So this year we actually have a number of ways that staff and other folks from outside Bishop are engaging in walkthroughs of classrooms. EL, our new curriculum, has a coach who is working with us and does both informal and formal walkthroughs throughout the year to assess our implementation and provide support to our teams based on our needs. As mentioned earlier, we have a learning walk committee that will serve to create more opportunities for peer-to-peer observations around the building based on teacher interest and need. And then we also have our district level walkthroughs that include administrators from around Arlington as well as district EL walkthroughs. So while we had walkthroughs in the past, this year we've had many more, and we're looking at this as an opportunity for growth and sharing best practices amongst our colleagues. So I also wanted to just highlight a couple of things from our panorama data that is, of course, taken by our 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. So the first piece is comes from data from the fall of 2023 to the spring of 2024. So in that time frame, in the area of sense of belonging, our scores grew 8% overall. And with the specific question of how well do people at your school know you as a person, there was a 17% increase in that time. That was really great for us to see, and I think it speaks very well of the work that our staff does to get to know students throughout the course of the year. Also, we just got our fall panorama data just a few days ago, so it's lucky we presented now rather than earlier. But so for the fall panorama data for families in the area of school climate, there was an increase from the spring to this fall of 9% overall, and a 29% increase from the spring for the question, how motivating are the classroom lessons at your child's school? So I was very pleased with this, and while there is still work to be done in both areas of sense of belonging and school climate, we are seeing improvements.
And here are some highlights from the Hardy School. Last year, the 2023-2024 school year, kindergarten and grade 5 piloted the EL curriculum. This year, all grades are implementing the EL curriculum. Our PTO is integral at the Hardy School and is committed to supporting enrichment that is aligned with our curriculum. Hardy School is piloting staff committees as well. Our committees include Data, Equity, PBIS, SEL, Supported Learning Center Program Development, Enrichment and School Spirit, Sunshine, and All School Assembly Planning. Hardy School is using ACE time to strengthen our commitment to taking action based on evidence, collaborating intentionally with colleagues, and relying on data to inform our decisions. Our literacy and mathematics coaches are working closely together to support teaching and learning across all domains.
All right, so to wrap up, lastly, we wanted to discuss just the future in each of our buildings and some of the areas that are important in moving forward to our school success. First, I just wanted to mention that we would like to increase our social work from 1 social worker to 2 social workers to be in line with other schools. We do have an increase in mental health needs for students and often families as well, and this is vitally important to meet the needs at Bishop. 1 social worker has a very hard time to effectively work with all of our students who have social emotional disabilities, do proactive work within the classrooms, and work with all the students that arise throughout the year that are not identified. This year we started using the Panorama platform for mental health issues and social emotional learning, and it was very interesting. We just got those results recently, and as reported by 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, half of our students self-reported to have emotional regulation deficits. So having an additional social worker will allow us to have the resources to address these student needs. Also, we are looking to improve some of the technology in our old, not quite 100 years old, but but an old Bishop building, and to get microphone sound systems in all the classrooms, because that's just good universal design for learning for all students. And of course, it certainly helps students who have attentional issues and hearing issues too. We are going to continue to utilize our ACE meetings, ILT, committees, learning walks, and school council to forward Bishop School's equity work, which is very important to us. And lastly, we always continue to look to strengthen our family relationships with communication and engagement. In particular, we would love to increase our Panorama survey.
And so here's what we're hoping for Hardy's future. We're hoping for ongoing program development for our Supported Learning Center C. We would like to ensure that the Hardy School building and grounds meet ADA accessibility guidelines. We would like to ensure that Hardy's temperature control systems are updated and maintained, and we'd like to increase the number of spaces that are cooled in the warm months. And we would also like to strengthen collaboration between teams that serve the Hardy School, including the instructional leadership team, the School Improvement Council, and the PTO. And at this time, we would really just like to thank you all for listening about the Hardy School and the Bishop School, and we would like to answer any questions you have about our schools.
Okay. Ms. Morgan.
So I had a question, Ms. Leiner. You said that the picture, the displaying student work on the wall is an example of equity. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that means to you?
Sure. Yeah, I think that when we think of the environment, so when the tool that we created for our equity walkthroughs, look specifically at the environments, the curriculum, and then like student discourse, like how much are students sort of engaging with one another. And so when we think about the environment itself, including things like student work around is a way to promote equity in the sense that everybody's words and work are shown on the walls. So that's just one piece of it. There's a number of things that sort of in an environment could be equitable practices, but that's one piece. It's also aligned with our EL rubric that we're using this year for walkthroughs to kind of look for student work on the walls as well.
Okay. So is the display of student work like unusual at schools? I mean, I've been in a lot of elementary schools over a long period of time, and I've never been in a classroom where there hasn't been like copious amounts of student work displayed. So, but maybe is that something new at Bishop, thusly sort of remarkable? Or I guess I'm just trying to like understand like.
I don't know. I wouldn't say that it's new at Bishop, but the idea of actually like changing up the work, I don't know the classrooms that you're talking about. Is the work something that's been up since the fall and is still in the spring? But looking at like recent student work and things that they're working on, especially at the end of our modules, there's usually some sort of final assessment that's done. And so again, having those pieces of writing on the wall specifically is just, something that we're looking at and does like show equity in the voice of all students.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Carden.
Thank you. So you're our last elementary principal, so I'll direct this question to you. So appropriately in a lot of the plans, we've seen focus on the focal groups and narrowing the gaps. But another item in the strategic plan is focused on the deeper learning component. And we haven't really heard much about what's going on as far as that. We have heard recently from a group of parents who report that their kids are not engaged because they're not being challenged with, deeper work. So I wonder, has that emerged in your council discussions? Because you have parents on your councils. If not, then that sort of explains things. But if there is sort of a need for, more engaging and deeper challenges for some of our kids, is that something that we're focused on at all, or has just not come up yet?
Is that for me?
Either.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead. No, you can start.
I mean, one thing and again, being new to Arlington and being new to the Hardy School, I think that I know that this is a priority for our district, and I know it's deeper learning is a priority for the Hardy School. And I was excited coming in that we've adopted the EL curriculum, because I know that that's a strength of the EL curriculum, that it's a knowledge-based curriculum. It's set up to have students truly use higher order thinking skills. They don't respond to just superficial questions. So I'm seeing that work happening in our classrooms. I'm seeing very young children engaging in deeper learning, especially in the EL curriculum. So I'll just say that that's something that I felt excited about and I see happening in our classrooms on a regular basis.
Great, thank you.
I'd just like to add, I would echo that, and then to your point about the school council, it hasn't come up as an issue at school council per se. I would say that additionally, we've looked at the materials even, because the curriculum is, all planned out for us, to look for ways that we can extend and we can add and do things so that we can have that extension sort of built in within the curriculum too.
Dr. Allison Ampe.
Dr. Homan I'm going off on another tangent.
Can I respond to Mr.
Go
Carter's
right
question
ahead.
quickly?
Yeah.
I think to Ms. Saunders' point, and actually to the previous question for Ms. Leiner, the performance tasks in EL are providing more opportunities for more frequent, authentic audiences for student work, which is a component of deeper learning that we are just getting used to. I think there's a lot of opportunity in the performance tasks in particular to add in, enrich, deepen whatever is happening in what students do. It's the end of each of the 4 modules. And so teachers are just, like those who are doing the curriculum now have just finished the first performance task. And I think we've heard from some of the teachers who did it last year that they've made some pretty significant additions, enrichments to the performance task because it is one of those things that has a really high ceiling. So you can add the challenge there in a way that we haven't been able to with previous curricular materials. So there's some real opportunity there that will give more opportunities for those authentic audiences. And I've also seen a lot of instances of folks taking language and strategies from aspects of how the ELA curriculum is structured and applying them in other disciplinary areas. And so that provides a little more opportunity for the comparison too. Like if this is helping us understand what deeper learning is, where are opportunities for deeper learning and curricula don't necessarily set themselves up that way. So I'll just add that to what they were saying. Sorry.
Okay, Dr. Allison Ampe.
Okay. This is about, you reported that half of the students in grades 3, 4, and 5 reported emotional regulation deficits. And I'm just wondering, is this against, what's the stand, I'm thinking about your typical 3rd grader, how emotionally regulated do you expect them to be? And
this is the first year we've used this tool, so we don't really have any data to compare it to. So for example, we can't look at previous years and see how kids reported to see if this is just a common trends or if it's something that's unique to this group of kids. That being said, it's the self-reporting, I think, that is particularly important to me. This isn't something that we've identified, as this is something that the kids themselves are answering questions about self-regulation skill, emotional regulation skills. And so, yeah, I think that there's more that we need to kind of dig into to understand this better. But because, like I said, these, this just came out, I think, last week. And so we're still digging with our social work team. We just had a meeting today talking about all of this and identifying kids and trying to really dig a little bit deeper. But I do think it's still notable, and I want to understand it better, perhaps to your point, in a broader term, to see if this is very typical or if this is unique to our group of students.
okay, I guess the other question would be, are the teachers reporting significant problems like classroom, keeping control of the classroom and stuff? Are they seeing an unusual amount of dysregulation, or is it just kind of standard?
Right, so we haven't gotten there yet with those conversations. Again, this data just sort of came out, but that's, the next steps to see if this is something that we're seeing or if it's something that internally students are feeling. And that's why they're answering questions in the way they are.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Thielman.
You mention was made of the ADA audit. So those audits have taken place at Hardy. Okay, do we have that report?
I'm still understanding what exactly that
I think it was a report that was completed several years ago, maybe in 2018. So I'm just being new, just trying to gather information about the work that has been done at Hardy and what still needs to be done. I think some of the work has been completed, but especially because we have the Supported Learning Center program there, and we have some students with significant mobility needs. We keep going back and looking at it and working with facilities and working with our finance team to make sure that we can complete all of that work. I believe it was done in 2018.
I heard about it for the first time today, but I will say that we've done a number of repairs and adjustments over the last couple of years since the SLCC went to Hardy.
Yeah.
Because it was not up to what it needed to be in order for students to be able to access it. And so it's been a good opportunity to make sure that we're up to ADA compliance. And if we need to refresh ADA assessments across the district, then this is an opportunity for us to think about that.
Okay, thank you. And then Bishop, you guys, you made mention of it too, the ADA audit, or you're going to be, no, maybe I may have missed, okay.
No, I think
set.
we just have like a few small improvements to be made in that area, but there aren't larger, ADA issues at Bishop.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else from the committee? Seeing none, I want to make note of a couple of things. First of all, when I was a principal, the thing that I dreaded was a day where I come in and find out the social worker wasn't there. Anybody else I could make do with. Social worker, if the social worker was absent, it was going to be a tough day. I want to note, because you cited your accountability percentile scores, that the accountability rating of 75 means you're achieving all your goals on average. And so that I have something in the 90s is way beyond what the expectations are. 75 is the expectation. If you're meeting all your expectations, you're going to get 75, so you're getting a bunch of bonus points someplace. I heard the words academic discourse pop up in there, and it seems that in many of your scores this is showing, because one of the things I do is I go looking for constructive response and idea development scores. And I want to specifically commend Bishop Grade 5, which blows the doors off of the constructive response scores for both science and mathematics, and also has high idea development scores for your whole 5th grade. The Hardy 5th grade idea development scores are also quite good. Now, my puzzle is, and I don't know the answer to this, and don't want to put you guys on the spot because it's a district-wide question, but you're two thoughtful people and you understand what's going on. The one place where we're sort of weak in terms of that constructive response is 3rd grade ELA. Is that a function of moving the curriculum and that we just haven't gotten to really being skilled at building that up? That's my hypothesis.
Would you like to ask your literacy coach? Not to totally put her on the spot.
The literacy coach would need to be in front of a microphone because we are televised to the world through ACMi.tv. And these things are archived, so 3 years from now, somebody's going to come looking at this.
Oh, wonderful.
Sorry, Maria, I could see your wheels turning though.
No, that's okay.
And are you talking specifically about data that just from last year, or
from the ELA scores from the data from 2024, spring of 2024?
from the, so in at Bishop specifically, we have not implemented the new curriculum yet. It's this year is the first year that EL is being implemented for grade 3 at Bishop. So I believe in our former ELA curriculum units of study, we did not have the kids doing a lot of work with constructive response. And in EL, what we're seeing now, starting as early as 1st grade, even a little bit in kindergarten, they're already starting to learn these skills, which really we've never done before. I mean, I was just in a classroom yesterday and today where they're learning, they're learning the different steps and how to answer a response, and they even have little notes that they put on their desk with the steps of how they do it, and it's starting in 2nd grade already. And then you see those same lessons happening again in 3rd and 4th. So we're definitely building that capacity right now.
Because I see the ability to communicate as being sort of a marker of deeper learning. And when I see classrooms, because I used to do this for a living, when I see classrooms that are doing well on things like constructive response, that's generally a sign of really strong practice within the classroom, and that there's good discourse within the classroom between teacher and student and student and student. So
And that's one strength that EL has is student discourse, that they're starting as early as kindergarten talking to each other, practicing those skills very early on, a lot of verbal rehearsal, and that verbal rehearsal we're really seeing reflected in their writing. And I really do believe as time goes on, we're going to see those third grade scores change because they really haven't had that experience before. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that because I already see it now happening in the classroom. So
Thank you. It was wonderful
Yeah.
having you
Yeah,
here.
thank you.
Thank you for coming up and
yeah,
talking to us.
absolutely.
Any other questions or comments regarding this? Hearing none, thank you very much. Superintendent?
All right, I just want to say, Ms. Liner's been the principal for 2 years.
This
As
is,
of
yeah, the
last
second year I
month.
sat here.
Right.
Yes.
And I think still, I'm thinking, like, your first official, like, full permanent year was last year. And Ms. Saunders just started with us this year. The purposeful work around professional learning and school culture and committee work and empowering educators to make decisions is very evident at both schools. And so thank you both for your leadership and for a lovely combined presentation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks to your teams for coming, too.
Next up is Gibbs.
All right, Madame Pierre Maxwell, come on up.
We're only 10 minutes behind schedule.
Nope, that's the wrong thing. Hold on. That's the right thing.
They will switch.
Whoops. Okay, while Gibbs team gets set up, I just want to note that in the time since the Gibbs team was last here, they have taken 2 trips to Nature's Classroom, one in the spring and one in the fall. So I know there's been a lot going on because there's a lot involved in that and also a lot involved in transitioning a new class into our 6th grade school and a new class into Audison and out of our 6th grade school. And they've done that along with a couple of overnight trips, 6, I think, actually, to total them up. So thank you for all the work that you have put into that experience for our Trailblazers, and I'll let you take it away.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us here to present tonight. I brought a big chunk of the Gibbs team with me tonight because these are the people who's been working with us, the students who are currently at Audison and the one who are at Gibbs. So I have a full team who's part of the ILT, but also district-wide partnership that continues along with the work we do at the Gibbs. So I am Madame Pierre Maxwell, the principal, and I'll have them introduce themselves.
I am Stephanie Grana, the assistant principal.
Simone Petrava, the district SEL coach.
Octavia Bronner, director of math and computer science. Jen Bernisen, district mental health specialist.
Thank you. You're gonna drive for us?
Yes, I'll drive.
Yes.
Clicker's not working.
This is the agenda we have for tonight. We won't dwell on it too much because you're gonna go through every slide, so I won't repeat what's there. So I'm always excited to talk about the Gibbs vision and mission because that's what drives us. We are very special schools, getting those students to come to us every year. And how do we do that? Our core values is centered around these 3 keywords: to be understanding, unified, and unstoppable. As I meet with new staff every year, I meet with them once a month. When I talk to them about these 3 words, I love when they understand this is not something we do to the children. This is something that we all practice to be as trailblazers. We aim to always be understanding, to be unified so we can be unstoppable in whatever we're doing. To the children, I said, that's not something you do just as Gibbs. That's something you do at home, wherever you are, to make sure that it becomes you. So that continues to be part of our core values. And this is our school at a glance. And what makes us special is getting those students from 7 elementary school every year to introduce them to the middle years. We continue to use responsive classroom as the philosophy that grounds what we do with the children, specifically in advisory and throughout the school day. Growth mindset, we guide them through that and teach them what that is to exemplify growth mindset in the way they think, the way they do things. We also use the 5 CASTLE competencies to really make sure that They have great self-awareness about how they're feeling in the moment, in the present, that they're able to communicate, to organize, to make relationship with each other, and to make responsible decisions. These are important ways that middle schoolers, that developmental stage, these are all great tools that we spend very intentional time to teach the kids how to use them to facilitate their learning. We are organized in learning communities, and we continue to have 5 of them, LC 1 through 5, and our special classes are called exploratory learning communities. This year we started with 537 Trailblazers.
So this year at Gibbs, we have some great wins and some glows that we would like to tell you about. The first is the Gibbs School started, this is our 5th year, I believe, and this is the first year we've actually extended our supported learning centers. We, in the past, have had a supported learning center for our students on the autism and cognitive disabilities, and this year we've actually expanded that to have a supported learning center for our social, emotional, behavioral disabilities, as well as our dyslexia and dysgraphia students as well. We also have the Trailblazers Guide to Gibbs, which happens in the beginning right over the summertime through Summer Fund. This year we had 320 incoming Trailblazers attend that Trailblazers Guide to Gibbs. And this year, thanks to Dr. Holman and Dr. Ford Walker for making it possible for all students to attend at no charge this year, was phenomenal. So thank you both for that. We continue with our first 9 days induction. We're in our 3rd year at Gibbs, which is the first 9 days of school, where we take the entire school to learn our philosophies, our practices, our core values, and the 3 U's. This is the best year for our first 9 days. Our staff is so adjusted to it. They were able to coach and educate our new staff coming in that this year was phenomenal. And as Dr. Holman said, this is our 2nd year with Nature's Classroom, our overnight experience. We had 404 Trailblazers that attended the Nature's Classroom overnight. We had a few students who were supposed to go but didn't go due to illness, and we had only 123 students remain at Gibbs throughout the entire 3 trips that we did. One thing different this year is we did switch our trip to be in September, October, which was phenomenal. It helped build our core values and helped the teachers and the students build that rapport and relationship to help us build a community as we started off the new school year.
Dr. Holman, we brought some pictures for them to glance at some of the activities. If you click on that link.
If that's not live in your slides, I'm happy to upload it separately. Did you want to talk through any of these?
These are just different activities. I wanted them to just see the different. It's a fun time for all the
So
students and very hands-on. I think many parents are a little bit anxious about how they're gonna spend the night, is there's gonna be any issues, but they're so exhausted at the end of the day. They go to bed and look for more the next day, but it's really wonderful. The kids love it.
Okay. Gibbs opened because the enrollment was so big, and it is still challenging at Gibbs. We have 537 students this year, the biggest class we've had. We've had to get creative at Gibbs, where we've moved some classrooms, we've changed some staff amongst LCs, and we have more teachers moving around on carts throughout our building. This year, all the classrooms are shared amongst the Gibbs teachers.
So special education is a pillar that truly gets our attention, demands our attention every year as we prepare to transition our students. And we were fortunate, as Mrs. Greiner shared, to open 2 additional supported learning communities. That being said, every year we have to be mindful of looking at the year ahead, how we're going to tackle it, what are the needs of the incoming students. You will see a slide later where we talk about the challenges of staffing, finding the right staff, making sure we have the correct teacher assistants for the students, but also the capacity of the staff. We have to keep on building the capacity of the staff. For example, this year, it was the first year with the dysgraphia and dyslexia children with those needs, so we had to make sure that we have staff getting those professional learning so they're able to effectively support the children. So that's always in flux in regard to space and in regard to the correct staffing and materials to make sure that we have the materials in real time and the professional development that comes with it. So, but we're doing good. We had the funding and the support. So this year also, with the numbers come, I believe, the most diverse group of children we've had in the building. If I bring to your attention, I think the diversity is mostly being reflected in our multi-race students, which is at 10.7%. Last year, it was only 2.7%. And also, it looks like our Asian students also, last year, they were actually a lot more, but this year they're only at 10%. So it shifts where we have the diversity, but it's still a good chunk of diversity in the building among students. I think I spoke to that a little bit a second ago.
So we're all going to share some of the slides as part of the team. So the 2024 MCAS data, overall, 73% of students were meeting or exceeding their targets, which gave Gibbs a classification of not requiring assistance or intervention and resulted in the accountability percentile of 84.
Our students continue to make growth. If you look at this, this graph is showing the percentile of students who are making their growth in math and in ELA. And this is for English language art. We have met out overall, all students met their target, except for one subgroup. I believe it's our Asian subgroup that did not meet their target, but the rest of the students overall met their target for ELA. And this graph is showing that we still, even though when you compare our performance to the state, we have a plus 27% and 2% growth just within the district, but compared to the state, 27% growth. The next slide, I want to show something, the next slide. Dr. Holman. Here you can see there's still a tremendous gap between our students who have individualized plans versus those who don't. Although we are happy to see that they're moving in the right direction, the students with IEP, in making their growth to trying to close the gap. They are moving in the right direction, but not fast enough to our liking, or not with the substantial growth we'd like to see that movement.
So when we're parsing out the math data, all students, when we're thinking just about all students, there was a positive change in their achievement, nearly meeting that 2024 target. And then when we look at the subgroups, most of the subgroups also saw a positive change, with many of them meeting or exceeding their 2024 target. So looking at the trend of scores, sorry, I forgot which slide I was on. Looking at the trend of scores from 2019 to 2024, we see that there's 68%, so most of the students are meeting or exceeding. There was no change from the previous year, but we're still above the state by 27%. And then we have our average scale score went up a little bit, but is above the state average as well. When we're thinking about those gaps, zooming in on the students who have IEPs versus those that don't, or thinking about all of our high needs learners and those that are not, there's still, this slide I think clearly shows that there's still some work that we have to do at Gibbs. Those on IEPs and that have high needs are showing growth from 2023. And it looks like the gap is closing, but it's not closing in the right direction.
So based on the data that was just presented to you, in keeping with providing our students with equitable access and rigorous and comprehensive content to ensure that they have an inclusive and engaging instructional practices, we want to bring our attention to using UDL to ensure that all of our students have access to equitable learning, and educators are constantly reviewing and collaborating to ensure that students have access and looking at that deeper learning, providing that tier 1 instruction and supporting our students.
Academic goal 2 for Gibbs plays off of our strategic goal initiative 1.3 around our multi-tiered system of supports. So there's a team of teachers from both Gibbs and OMS. It's 4 teachers, both building principals, Ms. Rubino and Madame Pierre Maxwell, as well as myself, Dr. Ford Walker, and Dr. Homan are participating in a pilot program through DESE, an advanced learning pilot program that's designed to help support districts developing a continuum of culturally responsive advanced learning services, utilizing that multi-tiered system of supports as a framework.
In thinking about our third goal, which is around culture and climate, all students have a supportive relationship with at least one adult at school, are engaged in their learning, and feel they belong in the school community. Gibbs School will create and sustain a caring and welcoming environment where all adults and students feel a sense of belonging. Additionally, all students will have a supportive relationship with one or more adults at school for the purpose of ensuring that each student engages in their learning, experience growth, joy, and feel the sense of belonging in the Gibbs School community. Go ahead. And we wanted to share a little bit about the recent panorama data. And this piece of data here talks about the social emotional learning pieces for student competency and well-being. And I just wanted to highlight, I know there was a question earlier tonight about sort of what we're asking around emotion regulation especially, but these questions are asked at the individual student level, and we're shifting this year to looking at a more global piece of information around students. In the past, we've done the mental health screener that focused on anxiety at this grade level and in the elementary grades, and this is getting us a lot more information about how students are doing more globally related to that culture and climate goal as well. Emotion regulation, I know, is a question that folks have, and so I wanted to just share that students are asked a series of questions about how able they feel to manage strong emotions when they're having them, and then how able they feel to shift out of those strong emotions like anger, sadness, those kind of things. And so students are ranking that. And what we know about adolescents is that that's an emerging skill for them. And so I think it's pretty natural that they're going to feel like they can do it sometimes. But I think that that's a really important piece of data for us to consider. And then the more global climate goal, no, you can go ahead. Around, especially, I think it's a really positive piece of data to think about the student-teacher relationships that, 83% of students are feeling pretty positive about that. And that really speaks to that sense of belonging and that adult relationship there at school.
And then the last goal at Gibbs is around family engagement. As you all know, we have 7 different elementary schools coming into Gibbs, and it's not only us transitioning the students into Gibbs, we have to transition the parents as well, which can be a big change for the parents going from an elementary school for 5 or 6 years into the Gibbs school for 1 year. We continue to support the families through the transition, and we also continue to work with our curriculum directors, because one thing that Madam Pierre Maxwell and I have noticed this year is that the curriculum does shift a little bit from the elementary to the middle school, which can be a change not only for the kids, but also for the parents. So we're working with our curriculum directors to help us kind of educate the parents on that as well. We also have a family engagement committee that is working on some activities to bring our parents more into our building and to create some more school events at Gibbs this school year.
So our goals from year to year continue to be similar, although different, because the cohort of students are different, so we have to be intentional about what of these practices we have established works for them and what do we need to work on changing. So having a continuous conversation around how best to teach the children. This year, we're looking at practicing more UDL framework lessons to make sure that we have equitable access for all students is a big part of what we're doing, which is connected to that pilot program Director Bonner referred to, and really making sure that our teachers are having time to collaborate and to talk about their practices. We also are fortunate that our districts makes it possible for our teachers to continue to build their capacity. 2 examples is that we have a partnership with Brandeis University. 2 of the Gibbs staff have already completed the program under that partnership. We also every year have teachers who continue to improve their skill in different reading programs so they can support our students with their reading intervention need. We also have leveraged our school counselors' capacity by making sure that they are thinking tier 1. So every one of the counselors are servicing the entire school, but they also are supporting students who need tier 2 and tier 3 support, social, emotionally, or behaviorally. So we are very hopeful that every year we're learning from the current grade to help the next group that comes in front of us. This year, as Assistant Principal Griner alluded to, one of the things we really want to work on in our transition for the incoming class is to have a forum where the directors get to really talk to them about academically what does that transition look like, how the kids' learning will differ from what they're doing in elementary school, just to really make sure that it doesn't just become like a rude awakening when the parents realize when they look at the grades or what's going on in the school that we're able to create a space to have that conversation with them in the spring or the summer before the next class transition, which I think will be helpful for many of our parents. Thank you.
And to the committee. Ms. Morgan.
So I had a question actually from the, I don't know, Dr. Homan, if you're able to pull up the big SIP, like the big document
Yes,
that we
I
got.
can. Give me a second.
Page 11. I guess I wanted, so first of all, I wanted to ask if we could get the attendance data either from Dr. Coleman. It's just not in here for this one. So if we could get an updated version that has that, that would be helpful for me because that's something that I look at. The thing that I wanted to ask about, and I actually am going to ask if the data is right, first of all, on page 8, the cohort analysis, which I really appreciate. So this is the showing of the same kids, right, who took the MCAS in 5th grade at 7 elementary schools. Then they came to Gibbs last year. And the high needs and students with disabilities, the drop in the percentage of kids who are actually at standard is really significant, right? And these are the same kids from 5th grade, right? So we had 40, I'm looking at the top, right? The high needs kids. So the non-groups, the groups that weren't high needs, didn't have IEPs, those 85 to 81, fine. Like they were stable-ish, right? There's obviously movement year to year in those groups, but for high needs kids, that 45% of them were at standard in 5th grade, and that drops to 26% after a year at the Gibbs. To me, that's concerning. That's a lot of kids who were there, who were hitting that benchmark in 5th grade, and then couldn't do it 12 months later, right? Same thing happens with students with disabilities. In math, it's not quite. The drop isn't quite as significant. I think that's on page 11. The high needs drop is pretty significant. 49 to 31. That's like 20%, right? So what are we talking about there with these are the same kids, right? They were at a certain level of achievement, and 12 months later, a big group of them couldn't meet that standard. So what are we doing about that?
Well, I'm glad you're noticing that. These are the same fifth graders going into sixth grade. They are coming from 7 schools and coming into 1 school. So, and we're noticing that. It's not lost on us. That is why the school is looking at Tier 1 instruction. What does that look like? That is also why our district has introduced the EL curriculum to bring that coherence and consistency and to move that into the sixth grade school. So there's a lot happening because...
Madam, before you go any further, can I just clarify something? That this is showing the students you have in sixth grade right now, their results.
These are the kids, these are the 7th graders.
They are the 7th graders.
These are the 7th graders
yes.
now? Okay,
yes.
This is 2024 sixth grade.
They took it in the spring.
They took it in the spring?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So these kids are no longer at Gibbs.
Right,
but
this is showing their outcomes from last year's
This to
sixth
me
grade.
is concerning because I'm like, well, what's going to happen to our, like, these high needs kids, right, were marching, and I get that they were in 7 buildings, but they were the same kids, right? And they were making progress from 3rd grade to 4th grade to 5th grade, right? They were improving there was a larger percentage of that cohort that was getting to that standard, right? And then they came to Gibbs and a whole bunch of them fell off. Right, and that's what I'm pushing on because that is concerning to me. Now they've moved on to Audison now, right? So they're Ms. Rubino's cohort of 7th graders and Ms. Keys, and that will be what happens with them there. But that's those are pretty big drops.
Can I give you a comment on that might help? One, there's always a little bit of a middle school slip. It's developmental. We see it across the board every year. They always dip a little bit from elementary school to middle school. Some of it's they don't care about MCAS as much in middle school. Some of it's just prioritizing other things. Some of it is their brains are just developing at different paces when they get to this age group. And like by high school, they sort of catch up, but middle school's a little wonky. The other is, I do want to point out, they just went through a massive special ed reorganization in part because of stuff like this. Mm-hmm. So they're working on fixing this. And I think that's huge, that special ed, when Gibbs was created, special ed was the big concern. I was on the group that was like planning the split of the middle school. And the thing we were most worried about was special ed. Mm-hmm. And then when it went down there and it had no programs and the kids came out of supported programs and into the general population and then back into supported programs and the Audison, it's challenging. And I see that as a 7th grade teacher. So I think they're moving in the right direction on this by putting more structures into their special education programming.
But with due respect, I mean, 49 to 31 is more than a dip, right? Like that is
a piece of
it's
it.
a big, that is a significant, that's quite a number of high needs cohort is not a small number of kids. It's a pretty significant group of kids who managed to get to that standard 1 year and then couldn't get there the next. So I hope that's part, I hope that's, something that, you guys are talking about, because to me, it looks, I would like to see, and again, I think there can be variability in data, right? But all of these are statistically pretty significant decreases. It's not as big in math, but we're managing to hold. The thing is, honestly, this is what's funny. If we were seeing decreases for everybody, right, I would be like, okay, maybe that's just kind of part of this. But like our non-groups, non-disabled, non-high needs, they're like holding about where they've been, right? Mm-hmm. So, all right, thank you.
Dr. Allison Ampe.
I wanted to follow because I actually had the same question about the same things. But first, can you go back and check your data? Because I was having a hard time looking at the numbers and being sure that the numbers come out the way that they seem here. I'm just not sure that the numbers are actually as bad as they look, given the absolute scores. So
I can talk to Mr. Coleman about that.
Okay.
We're also trying to get these cohort analyses into the same dashboard that you're seeing the other graphs coming out of. Unfortunately, the state makes it exceptionally hard to analyze these data, and this is, we agree with you, this is exceptionally valuable. Because it shows us with the same group of students where we're having a significant gain. Right. But we haven't had the ability to analyze that very well. So I can have him double check that, but it's very manual, so it is possible that there are errors.
Yeah, it just looking at the scores versus this, I'm not positive this is wrong. But right now, assuming that it is correct, as presented here, my I understand that we have the opportunity to join this program from DESE for the accelerated learning or whatever it's called. But I'm just concerned whether we have the capacity. It feels to me if we're going to go all in on a kind of Manhattan type project in something, we should be doing it for our high needs learners or our students with disabilities. And I'm just concerned about how much capacity we have here and whether we're going to be stretching things too far, and how are we keeping track of that? And just, it worries me.
I'd like to, can I?
Superintendent.
So, a couple of things. We spent a lovely day at DESE today. Several of us who are here have had an entire day together. And importantly, the advanced learning pilot, and this is why we joined, is very focused on the implementation of strong at or above grade level Tier 1 instruction and the implementation of MTSS programming that, we often think of MTSS as a triangle. They showed a graphic today that we really liked, which made the triangle more like it wasn't a diamond, but like a diamond, and which said that tiered intervention can go in both directions. So students' needs are along a significant spectrum in every disciplinary area. Students may need intervention that looks like deepening their learning. They may need intervention that looks like supporting them to grade level. And there are lots of different ways to go about doing that. And so our hope in joining this pilot is that it gives us strategies that benefit all of our students wherever their learning need is, so that we can build flexible systems. Notably, at the elementary level, we have more flexible capacity in scheduling than we have at the secondary level. There's just by nature of how you schedule, it just gets more rigid. But there are ways to make that rigid schedule more flexible. And so we really want to look at those opportunities. They often take additional staffing. And so those are things that we'll be talking about as part of the budget process. But this pilot is really focused on, and we joined it so that we could have it benefit all students, not only students with advanced learning needs, but it also debunks myths about students with advanced learning needs, one of which is that any of our students in these focal groups aren't students with advanced learning needs. I think it's easy for us to see that there are achievement gaps for students who are in our focal groups, but there are also students who are in our focal groups who might have an achievement gap, who might have advanced learning needs, and may not be getting what they need from the curriculum precisely because they have a disability that has an impact on how they engage with the curriculum in the classroom. And it is the case that a lot of students who aren't engaging with the curriculum aren't doing so because they've checked out, because the way they learn isn't being activated by whatever's happening in the classroom, or it's being deactivated by whatever's happening in the classroom. So let's not equate focal groups with not benefiting from advanced learning, because they're not mutually exclusive from one another. We have a lot of students with disabilities who could really benefit from having exposure to higher level learning, and all the other focal groups too.
Okay, I'm still concerned about capacity.
We are not. After being there today, we're really excited about these resources and what we learned.
Okay.
Yeah, good to see you. Thanks so much for the presentation. So this has been an ongoing conversation here at this table for quite some time about the transitions for students, but especially for students with learning disabilities, with IEPs. And so, I mean, have we addressed the challenge of transition for students with IEPs in the 5th to 6th to 7th?
Not fully,
Yeah.
but every year we're discovering what
Yeah.
can we do better and how to anticipate what to prepare for. And the children, even when we know a group, we know what specific group, as the year progresses, things are discovered. So we may have a few students who they find out they have a need in the spring of their transition year that was not actually identified prior to that. So there's a benefit to them being in the same building, and people already know what they need, and they also know who's in the building. There isn't an emotional roller coaster for them to come to get used to a whole new staff. Children who are in the general ed have challenges transitioning to new staff. So when you're looking at some of our students, a lot of the things we're doing are helping with them quickly being familiar with the staff, with each other from other school. But still, when they have to learn and demonstrate that same capacity they had before, there's a lot in the way of that that I don't have an answer. It's 1 year. By the time we think we're ready to really get them to access learning fully, they're ready to go.
Yeah.
So we're doing the prep work for them to access learning in a better way at OMS, because we have addressed many of the issue to bring all of them together and move as a cohort forward. So unfortunately, we don't have that luxury of keeping them and show the progress in the next year to come. But it
Well,
is.
that raises a big issue that we're going to have to talk about at some point up here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the committee? Be of good cheer on one point is that the cohort behind this one is about 40 students smaller, so you'll have a little breathing room back. But you're going to get up to about 500 kids in the cohorts that are, I'm looking at the second grade, and it'll creep back up again.
Yes.
It's a real challenge to have a school where there's really no wiggle room in that, if the third grade is big and the second grade is small, you can sort of adjust a little, but whatever that cohort is, you've got it. And I'm reminded that when we rebuilt the Ottoson back in the 90s, we built it for 950 students. And the Ottoson now has 965, and you have 530. Which just illustrates the reason why, as a district, we needed to open the Gibbs and do what we did. The one thing I've always noticed as a researcher and looking at data is that transition year usually results in a drop in scores in any district. And so if you were looking at the district scores alone and looking at the growth numbers, without knowing the configuration of the district, you could generally tell where they're doing the transition, be it 4 to 5, 5 to 6, and also another drop going into the high school. So the puzzle is, for all of us, how do we mitigate that when you're bringing the kids in? I really think you've made a good presentation tonight, and I think that the one thing that I've noticed, that regardless of all the other conversations we've had, and I don't have the ability to do a deeper analysis because all I can do is work off of publicly available data, is that the high leverage scores in terms of open response, constructive response, things on the MCAS that show the ability to communicate knowledge are very strong at the Gibbs, particularly in mathematics. And I pointed that out the other day when we had the discussion of the math curriculum. Again, as I was talking about the 5th grade in terms of supporting discourse, that's important, and it appears that you're focusing on that as well at the Gibbs. Is there anything else you're going to need from us going forward? The loaded question. I'm sure that I'm going to get a laundry list now. I shouldn't.
They need more special ed teachers.
Their budget request is due tomorrow, so.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes, it's
So that's
coming. It's coming
That's the
tomorrow.
challenge you're facing, which is the challenge we're discussing now among high needs. So you're going to need more support for high needs learners, and you're going to have a little more room in the building that we can work with that. Okay. Any other questions or comments, Superintendent? We go on to the Ottoson, right?
On we go.
Thank
Follow
you,
the kids
everyone.
up to the
Thank you.
Addison. Thank
See,
you,
that's what we
kids.
do, is we go through the Gibbs for one short breath, and then all of a sudden, bam, we're at the Ottoson.
All right. This is is a lovely chance to welcome our new principal of the Addison and new assistant principal, Ms. Migliero. Ms. Rubino rejoined our team after a short layover in Reading to be the principal at the Addison this year, and we're super thrilled to have her back.
Welcome home.
Thank you. It does feel like coming home, so thank you. It's been awesome. So I have with me here Lindsay Migliero, who's one of my assistant principals, and I do have two members of my school council who are here through Zoom as well, Shauna Pellier and Carmine Granucci, two parents. So thank you for coming. I wanted to start by thanking Lindsay Migliero, my assistant principal, and Chris Mahoney, who is my other assistant principal for grade 7, could not be here tonight. I also really wanted to thank my school council members who helped guide and provide stakeholder feedback on our school improvement plan. Nate Smith, who was one of our teachers, Joanna Katz, who is another teacher, Dan Hammond, who is one of our teachers. I already mentioned Carmine Granucci and Shauna Pellar, parents, Ted Lombardi, another parent, and Karen Koretsky, a community member who is part of the Arlington Coalition. And the members of our instructional leadership team also provided input and feedback on our school improvement plan. They include Jessica Pulzetti, Nanta Hardesty, Katie Hodgkins, Hillary Dawson, Dawn Carney, Abby Holt, Catherine Hart, Luna Hogan, Vicki Ross, Rochelle Smith, Brianna Goldstein, Tara Mank, Arafat Kastori, and Suzanne Hawkins. So those are teachers and district members as well. So tonight, as you can see from our agenda, I'm going to go through some wins and glows, our challenges and grows, our priorities, and how we are going to get there, and what we need in order to support that success. So I'm going to start by bragging about the Addison Middle School. If you have not already heard, our school was named 13th middle school in the state, according to U.S. News and World Reports. That's a pretty exciting glow for us, for all of the teachers and all of our staff members who have been really working really hard, and all of the district members who are part of that as well. The accountability percentile is at 95%, which is very high. We're at 90% meeting or exceeding targets, which is amazing as well. And I really think that shows all of the real hard work of our staff, our teachers, and our students who really care, and our families who really care about the success of students. I already mentioned our robust instructional leadership team that includes 14 staff members, and our school council, as I mentioned already, has 3 staff members, 3 parents, and 1 community member. Some things that are new this year, our OMS Student Council and our OMS peer leaders are really working hard to bring about student voice in our school community. Our student council already has brought up some really fun ideas for Spirit Week, which we just had before Thanksgiving. That included Pajama Day, Twin Day, and anything but a backpack, which was really fun. We had kids come to school with kayaks, pots and pans. What were some of the other fun ones? Suitcases. It was really pretty cool. A student even had a pair of sweatpants that he tied at the bottom, and that was his backpack that he walked around for the day. So it was actually a lot of fun just seeing the student council come up with these ideas and have these fun competitions with pictures and trophies as well. It brings about the spirit and the engagement. And our student council has also been really working with administration, me, our Department of Equity, Belonging, and Justice, on creating some interrupter phrases to interrupt hate speech. And we're going to be having some conversations about that coming up through Advisory and Aspire. So it's really nice to see their ground level work where the students really care about the community and are thinking about what they can do and how can they be upstanders and how can they show that to one another. Our peer leaders are also working together. They have started a food drive in conjunction with a high school student, and they have turned it into a friendly competition, again, showing school spirit, but also encouraging us to have a little bit of fun while helping out our community. This year, we have a renewed focus on our core values, engage, empower, excel. We work hard, we are kind, we speak our truth. I say that every day, or one of the assistant principals says that every day in our morning announcements, but we're really trying to go beyond just the words. And our teachers are doing that through the norms and agreements that they create in classrooms, through our advisory lessons, through conversations we have with students when they make mistakes. And they do make mistakes. They make a lot of mistakes. They are supposed to make mistakes. They're in middle school, so it really is an opportunity for us to have conversations with them and remind them about our core values and help them to think, what does that look like in action? What does it really mean if you are engaging, empowering, and excelling in your classroom and outside of the classroom? And that's work that we have work to do, and work that's a grow for us as well, and something that is always going to be a grow for middle school students because they are learning about who they are, their identities, and throughout that they make mistakes and they're impulsive and sometimes say things that they wish they could take back or do things that they wish they could take back later. But it's a lot of fun to kind of see them in those moments and see them when they move on and learn from those pieces. Also this year, we have staff committees, which are focusing on strengthening school culture, sense of belonging, and teaching and learning. And you'll hear me talk more about those and some of our goals. So I already mentioned this, but I just wanted to highlight it again. Our accountability from the state is 95%, and we are at 90% meeting or exceeding targets. You can go to the next slide. And you can see the overall achievement from 2023 to 2024. Our achievement is strong. It's high in ELA and in math. And you can go to the next slide as well. Again, similar results from 2023 to 2024. Strong in all of our groups and our subgroups. Go to the next slide. And you can see that the growth is also strong. You want to be in the green area, and in 7th and 8th grade, you can see that in both ELA and math, the growth is high. But that does not mean that we do not have some work to do. As you can see from this data, that we still have work with narrowing our achievement gap. It continues to widen for our EL students, our MLL learners, and our FLEP students, or our formal ML learners. And we also have, you can go to the next slide. We also need to see that our gap continues to widen or not show as much growth for our high need students. And high need students in both ELA and math, that includes students who are on IEPs, low SES, ML learners, are a combination of those subgroups. We are also taking a closer look at our student attendance and our chronic absenteeism. And as you can see from this slide, that our chronic absenteeism is higher within those subgroups as well. So what are we doing to improve and address some of these issues? One of the things that we are doing here this year is really trying to foster consistency and unity in our teaching and learning practices through my re-entry back into Arlington, through conversations that I've had with families, through conversations I've had with teachers. There is this desire, this need to have some consistency and continuity with our teaching and learning practices within our LCs, within our learning communities, within our teams. So as a result, this year we really are focusing on maximizing instructional learning by looking at our instructional practices and really being intentional around what that means. Are they culturally and linguistically appropriate, sustaining, and relevant? What are we doing as students enter the classroom? How are we really engaging them and activating their learning? How are we using formative assessments throughout the class and at the end of class to determine, have our students met the learning targets? What are they going to do if they did not meet those learning targets? So that's work that we are doing this year, that we are focusing on and thinking about what are those consistent teaching and learning practices that we want to see happening between the teams and in all areas, so that we can have learning communities can still have their autonomy and their individuality, but there are certain focus areas that we are going to maintain that consistency of practice with. And I'll get into that in a little bit more in some slides further down. Our next goal is around school culture and student engagement. So we are working hard to foster a positive and inclusive school culture that engages students in their learning. So we have some teacher committees that are looking at these areas in order to foster that student engagement. We have a teacher committee that is looking at collaborative problem solving for conflict resolution. Collaborative problem solving is used at the high school, so we are looking at expanding that to the middle school. That is a work that a group is doing this year. We are also looking at expanding our project-based and experiential elective options. So we are looking currently right now at our scheduling, and we are taking a look at our elective classes, and we have a committee that's reimagining some of our elective classes in the hopes to create some new options for students that give them a little bit more choice in what they are taking in the arts, in the music, in the technology fields. And we have currently in our schedule directed studies, and we are looking at how we can use those elective options and create new elective options and more elective options that will then eliminate the need for directed studies. We are also looking at barriers to attendance, and we have devoted time in our day with our counselors and our related service providers to be having monthly attendance meetings where we are looking at our data on a regular basis and then looking at students that may be falling into that chronic absenteeism or in danger of becoming chronically absent, and working with students and families to address what those barriers are and provide appropriate tiered supports to make sure that our students are getting education and getting the learning that they need. And then the final goal, you can go back one slide. The reorganization of our counseling department is in year 2. It was a year ago that the counseling department, all of the counselors now service students who are on IEPs, and this was done to meet the social, emotional, and mental health needs of all students. So a key focus of this year, of the work that we are doing this year, is looking at how we can improve the model so that counselors are still servicing all students, including students on IEPs, but how can we create opportunities so that our student counselors, follow our students from 7th to 8th grade, so that students, particularly our highest need students, maintain the same counselor from 7th grade to 8th grade. So how are we getting there? The first goal, we are doing that through our ILT workshop times. We are working with the ILT and our building curriculum directors to create workshops that focus on data and teaching and learning practices. Goal 2, I already mentioned some of those initiatives with the reimagining our elective options, addressing our chronic absenteeism and tardiness, and our family engagement initiatives as well, which include things such as a book club with families that I started over the summer. I actually had the second meeting of our book club this past week. Now we're going to choose a new book to read for the second part of the year. Coffee and conversations that I have on a monthly basis through Zoom with families, and other unique ways that we will come up with to engage families in the community through individualized supports for individual families, depending on what the needs of their students are. So, resources, what do we need to meet those goals? Some of our needs will be additional staff for elective classes that will help us to eliminate directed studies and also provide more options and choices for students. Additional staff to account for the increase in enrollment, PD on project-based learning and collaborative problem solving, supplies and other resources to support new class ideas, and infrastructure updates to support additional classroom workspaces. And that brings me to the Q&A.
Members of the committee.
Good job.
Wow, no questions.
I was going to say just simply that this is a broadly commendable school, and I was a member of one of the DESE advisory groups in terms of accountability and the reporting, and I cite you as the example of what's wrong with the way they designate commendation schools, because the size of the school gives you multiple subgroups that are that are large enough for analysis. And as soon as you get caught up on one, you're no longer eligible for a commendation award, which is ridiculous, because the other schools that might have 14 kids instead of 21, they slide by. Your size is the disadvantage in the way they calculated it is blatantly unfair. I think you are a commendation school. I think that everybody should know you're a commendation school. You're doing great work up there, and welcome home.
Thank you. Thank you.
You can do whatever
Just
you
'cause we
like.
still
Ms.
have our-
Morgan,
is that all right?
Ms.
Yeah.
Morgan, go ahead.
Does
So-
she have it in her?
No, so
This one, right?
the cohort analysis that's in the Gibbs SIP is not correct. You can't, it's not right. So the good news is it's nowhere near as bad as it looks. So that's great. I'm really,
We will fix
I
it.
am
We'll add
very
chronic
frustrated that we're not getting good data. It's very frustrating to me. It is very frustrating to me that this gets all the way to the school committee, and that honestly, that nobody before this said, holy moly, this drop is so significant. Can this possibly be correct? Right? And it's frustrating that it came, like at some point we have to say to ourselves, gosh, that's a really, really big dip. That's really concerning. Could it possibly be correct? Because it's actually wrong, right? But we have to ask those questions. It has to be part of the way that we're looking at this, and it shouldn't get all the way to this place until somebody says, holy cow, that's bad. Can it be right? And it's actually not. So I hope we can get to a place where we're looking at this information and we're really asking questions. The first question, it's okay for the first question to be, is the data correct? Right? So one, we should give our schools correct data. That's what they should be getting. Two, we need to ask questions when it looks like a really significant difference. And I don't think it should make it all the way to here until we start asking about it. So thank you, Mr. Schlickman.
I will, as somebody who did this for a living and was able to generate those charts, the only reason why I was able to go and do that analysis is because I had downloads of all students taking the test in Lowell from 2002 to the time I left the district. And I did relational databases, and I was able to pull and arrange things that can't be done given the level of software. If you're putting your data into a commercial package of software, you're never going to get this, because the data feed from the department, while very good on a lot of levels, doesn't do this, and there's no way to get at it. I share Ms. Morgan's concern that we're looking at bad data. We should double check it and make sure it accurately tells the story. That doesn't detract from the fact we wanted to say well done to you guys. Anyone else? Dr. Allison Ampe, we went.
Okay. So I appreciate how well you folks did in terms of your accountability rating and everything, but I do want to point out that students with disabilities did not, in ELA especially, did not see the same sort of increase, and in fact drop, did not achieve their target. And I just wanted to bring it out so that we're not just going rah-rah. Because this is a group we need to be concerned about. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyone else? Seeing none, we move on to first read Climate Leader Communities and APS presentation in 2024 Clean School Bus Rebate Program. Ms. Fox.
Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening. I think there is a presentation if you'd be willing to pull that up. My name is Talia Fox. I'm the sustainability manager for the town. I've worked with the town for around 3 years. I work in the planning department. I manage all of our greenhouse gas reduction projects for municipal operations as well as residents and businesses in town. So tonight I will be, thank you first for the opportunity to speak with you all. I'll be presenting tonight about what's called a decarbonization roadmap that the town and the schools must approve in order for the town to become certified as what is called a climate leader community. believe there is actually a PowerPoint presentation. If
Is this not it?
that's not it, but that's
Which file?
it is
This one?
the last one. Yeah, that one you just clicked on. Great. Okay. Great. I'll also be speaking briefly on the Clean School Bus Rebate, which I will be applying for as well. So the Climate Leader Communities Program is a new program offered by the Department of Energy Resources, which supplements the existing Green Communities Program. The Green Communities Program is a state program that is focused on funding energy efficiency projects, and it has provided funding in amounts of $100,000 and $200,000 over the years to Arlington. We've gotten over $2 million in funding over the last decade plus. The new Climate Leader Communities Program is designed to better align with the state's climate change mitigation goals, and it acknowledges that decarbonization activities are more expensive upfront than traditional energy conservation projects, even if they result in savings and benefits over time. Once communities are certified, they are eligible for grants of up to $1 million. And in order to be certified in the first cohort, we need to apply by the end of the year. The town has met 4 out of the 5 criteria for becoming a climate leader community. We have a local energy committee, the Clean Energy Future Committee. We have a commitment to decarbonize our operations by 2050, a goal which was adopted by the Select Board and memorialized in our Net Zero Action Plan. Today we'll be discussing the 3rd requirement, which is the Municipal Decarbonization Roadmap. The Select Board and the School Committee adopted a zero-emission vehicle first policy this past spring, and Town Meeting adopted the specialized stretch code in spring 2023. So both the Select Board and the School Committee need to adopt the roadmap. The Select Board adopted it last night. Next slide. That just shows that we've met 4 out of the 5 criteria. You can go to the next slide, please. So the decarbonization roadmap is a plan for how we're going to get to our emissions reduction goals, how we're going to eliminate emissions from our facilities and vehicles in the time frame that we have set forth. It's a tool that helps the town prioritize decarbonization projects leading up to 2050. And it does this by identifying specific implementation measures to meet or exceed the state's interim emissions targets before 2050 using a 2022 baseline. The town was awarded technical assistance funds to complete the roadmap with the support of our consultant, Power Options. Next slide, please. So I'll speak very briefly about the roadmap contents, and I'm happy to answer questions about the roadmap document itself. The building section takes a zero over time approach to guide electrification timeframes. This is an approach that leverages what are called trigger events, or points when equipment reaches the end of its useful life. And these are the moments that it's going to be most cost-effective to swap out fossil fuel equipment with electric alternatives. The building's roadmap also directs the town to focus on high-impact buildings, or those buildings that emit the most emissions first. Next slide, please. The vehicles section of the roadmap takes a similar approach, recommending specific electric vehicle models to replace internal combustion engine vehicles on timeframes that account for the age of the vehicle. This section also accounts for the availability of certain electric vehicles on the market. For example, electric heavy-duty trucks are not widely available currently for a reasonable cost. Costs are expected to come down, and there will be more models available in the future, and so replacements of those vehicles occur later in the roadmap. Next slide, please. The town's zero-emission vehicle first policy, adopted this past June, supports roadmap implementation by requiring that department directors evaluate and prioritize electric options before other types of vehicles. The roadmap notes that the vehicle replacement schedule is subject to change based on evolving factors. So I have reviewed the schedule of vehicle replacements with our DPW director, police and fire chiefs, and the school transportation director, and I'm working to adjust the list with their feedback, and will continue to be in conversation with them about what models make sense and in what timeframes. I also acknowledge that we cannot expect to have an electric fleet if we don't have charging for that fleet. There is an in-depth version of the roadmap that I can make available as requested that evaluates fleet charging infrastructure locations and equipment types and quantities. Unfortunately, it doesn't do this for the bus fleet, which is most relevant to this committee, I recognize, but the town is pursuing participation in the Mass CEC, or Mass Clean Energy Center's Accelerating Clean Transportation Program to assess options for bus fleet charging. Next slide, please. I also want to acknowledge that the upfront cost of many of these measures is high at the moment, as the market is transitioning. The goal of leveraging replacement cycles for equipment is to minimize the cost to the town so we can avoid costly retrofits in the future. The data we have demonstrate that life cycle costs of electric systems are comparable to or better than those of fossil fuel alternatives, that is, over the lifetime of the systems, including maintenance costs, operating costs, et cetera. For many of these buildings, we would need to add cooling anyway, so that contributes. Electric heat pumps are providing both heating and cooling, right? Plus, incentives right now are substantial for heat pumps. And the operating costs, specifically for ground source heat pumps, are lower. So all of that said, we might need to accommodate building electrification costs outside of the capital plan, and that is something I have been in conversation with the town's finance director, capital planning committee, and others about. I am also committed to, of course, pursuing as much funding as I possibly can through external grants. And getting certified through this program is part of that strategy, as is applying for additional funding through the Clean School Bus Program, which I'll speak about briefly. So I understand that the school committee plans to put this to a vote at your December 19th meeting after some discussion today. And I will be happy to answer any questions you have about the roadmap and provide follow-up if there are any modifications you would like to see. So assuming I get your approval, I will plan to apply for certification by the end of the year for this program. And I'll plan to support the town in updating the roadmap every 3 years as is required by the program. So next slide. On the subject of the clean school bus rebate, this is related to the funding strategy for electrification. I am here to inform the committee of my intention to apply for the 2024 Clean School Bus Rebate Program. This initiative is run by the US EPA and funded by the 2021 Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. Arlington was awarded $200,000 as part of the 2023 Clean School Bus Program to purchase a third electric bus in addition to the 2 that we already have. And I am planning to apply for funds in support of another electric bus to replace a diesel bus in the school's fleet. The maximum funding amount for a community like Arlington, which is not prioritized for the grant because we're not an environmental justice community by the federal government's criteria, is $170,000, so I will apply for that amount. The application requires that I include a form signed by an authorized school district representative acknowledging that the school committee was informed about the application, the number of buses I'm applying for, the fuel type of the buses, and who will own the buses. So I am here to inform you about the application that we are applying for one bus replacement with an electric bus, that the schools would own the bus, and I am not planning to apply for any funding for charging infrastructure because we already have 2 fast chargers at the Addison Middle School, and the school's transportation director has informed me that an additional bus could be rotated out on those 2 chargers. So the request for this subject is for the superintendent to sign the certification acknowledging that the committee was informed at this meeting, as she did for the last application cycle. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions about the roadmap or this rebate application process.
Questions from the committee? Mr. Cardin.
So just a clarification on the bus. So it sounds like we can support 3 buses on those 2 chargers.
We can support 4 buses on those 2 chargers. We are getting a third, and this application is for a 4th.
So he can rotate 2 buses on 2 chargers.
That is my understanding, and if it helps you feel better, they are fast chargers, so the charge time is faster.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just curious, what is the charge time?
Mr. Thielman.
So it depends on whether the bus is fully empty, but we're talking about instead of like a 10 to 12 hour charge, which would be a level 2 charger, it's more like 4 hours.
Okay.
Dr. Allison Ampe.
Even for a bus?
The bus, if it's going from like a 0 charge, it would be longer than that. But if you're just like most of these buses are not going to empty after they're driving around. They're getting plugged in at the end of the day. Their mileage is not, their mileage is not that significant. It's not going to deplete the battery. Is my point.
Okay.
Anyone else?
It's just the first reading today, it's second reading.
Mr. Thielman, yes.
Thanks. Okay, that's all. I just want to clarify. It's first reading today?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I mean, you could move to approve it tonight if you desire, if you feel we have enough information, but it's the procedure that we generally use is to put new items up as a first read and vote them at the second meeting, and as we meet the deadline, that's the way I scheduled it.
I mean, unless there's objection, I don't like to have people come back if they don't need to.
Okay, before you do that, Ms. Exton's hand is up.
Thanks. I just want to say thank you for all of the work that you have put into this and thinking about the schools and the need for, I see that we use most of the electricity in our, in this town, so this is important. But I was a part of a conversation, I want to say 2 years ago, when we got the report about the amount of electricity that all of the schools use, or the fossil fuels that are being used, and the cost was a huge issue. And you know, I heard you say something about $1 million, and that was like, that would hardly touch it. Like, I recognize this is going outside of the capital plan, but, and I did not read the very lengthy roadmap. I looked at your presentation, but I guess, is there a plan as part of what you, the roadmap on how this is all going to get funded by 2050?
That's a great question. This roadmap does not include a financial plan. The point of the roadmap is more, it's a timing tool to get us to start having conversations. And you're right that the $1 million is going to make a small dent in the cost for funding the electrification of these schools. I think this is something that the state acknowledges as well. There are still the federal rebates, which I have gotten some assurance will still be in place, at least for ground source heat pumps and solar arrays. So we would aim to pursue ground source heat pumps where it makes sense for certain buildings and try to get that 30% credit, tax credit. We could get it through what's called direct pay. I'm looking into other funding mechanisms as well. The Mass CC has a Green School Works program. So I think this is it's a hopeful, visionary document in a sense, right? With each school, we're going to need to evaluate what our realistic options are. And there are several schools in this roadmap that I saw the first draft of this, and I had a conversation with facilities, and we bumped back the timelines because we understand that the cost is substantial. And so it may make sense to replace some boilers right now with high efficiency gas boilers and evaluate our options in another decade for what's going to make sense for electrifying certain schools, just given the reality. So I think what we're going to try to do is focus on a couple schools that we could see a big impact in terms of greenhouse gas reductions, and just go out for as many grants as we can. And then if we need to look to debt exclusion or some other conversation, those are conversations I'm just beginning to have with folks at Town Hall. So this is a forward-looking document that is a living document of sorts. We're going to continue to be in conversation about it. But right now we're trying to demonstrate our leadership and position ourselves to be able to take advantage of grant opportunities. And that this is the best chance we have, I think, of getting the most right now.
Okay, great, thank you.
Dr. Allison Ampe.
Thanks. So yes, thank you for this. I had a couple questions in terms of looking at the roadmap. First, I agree, it's very aspirational. My question is, what if we agree to this and we do all the things? What if we can't afford to do whatever at the time we specify? Are we going to be dinged? Are we going to be dropped out? Are we going to be penalized in some way? What happens?
That's a question I have as well, because I think this program, so it's a new program, there hasn't really been much guidance beyond this first cohort and how to apply. I do think we'll be held to certain standards if we're going to be evaluated every 3 years, or even every year we're going to have to report back on our progress. And I know as part of this program there are certain additional policy actions or other programs that we're required to implement, which I'll probably come back and talk to you about at some point. But I think we're in a good position relative to the targets precisely because we've electrified this school and our baseline is 2022, is FY22. So because the baseline includes the high school using gas, we actually, the decrease for the 2027 goal, it far exceeds the target that the state has set, which is I think 20%, but we're at somewhere in the 30% reduction for our specific table, given the projections in the roadmap. So I think that's all to say we have a little wiggle room if we can't pursue electrification of a school on the time frame that we've set in here. As far as what the state is going to require, I can't really say at this point. I suspect if we're not able to meet certain targets, we might not be able to apply for a grant, or we might not be eligible for recertification, but I haven't heard that yet.
Okay, and then I was confused about what the baseline year is. You say 22, but in the intro it talks about limits below 1990, and I was just wondering what is, and everything we see is much more recent. So, I like 1990 better, I think. So that's one question. And what was my third? Oh, my final question is, I am concerned, this gets back to what if we can't do this? I'm concerned about 2030, actually, whether we have the money to do the things that are all lined up for 2030. That looked expensive, and it's soon. So those are, I'm happy to, if we have to pass, I don't think we can tweak this. We don't have the time or stuff, but I'm just pointing out I think these are problems.
The reason why we generally try to do things at first read, second read is if questions come up, people know what the questions are and can come back with some answers.
Right, but the thing is, this isn't something, I can't sit here and tweak
You can't
this
tweak
with
it,
any.
but, the thing is the question is out there is what happens if we don't meet it in 2030 or 2040?
Well, and I think, what if we can't pay for it in 2028?
Yes.
Yeah.
That actually is, I don't know about you, that's my first question.
No, exactly.
Because we have a lot of.
Hold on,
competing-
we
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
can't, we're a formal body, so,
Okay.
Ms. Morgan.
No, I'm done. I said everything. Apparently informally and out of line, so you can all
didn't
carry
raise your
on.
hand. Ms.
That's
Morgan
okay.
didn't raise her hand.
We get revenge next year. Mr. Carden.
Thank you. Yeah, I share some of a lot of the same concerns. I did look at it very carefully because I was expecting a plan that said we will do this in 2030, and it doesn't say that. It says we could do this in 2030 if we wanted to achieve our goals. So I think the way you framed it, and if this is accepted by them as sort of like we could do this, then that's acceptable to me for now. Obviously, as we get closer to 2030, we'll have to figure out what exactly are we going to be doing then and how are we paying for it. But for now, to meet the state requirement, it seems fine. I don't think, if they accept the plan worded this way, then they can't hold us to something that says, we didn't say we're going to do this, and so they can't ding us for not doing it because we didn't promise to do it, right? So, that's going to evolve as we get closer to 2050, of course, but I think they're going to have to step up with funding, and we're not the only town that's not going to be able to afford to do this. So I'm very comfortable with this as it is, and I do make a motion to approve the decarbonization roadmap.
Mr. Card made a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Carden, seconded by Mr. Thielman. The motion's on the table.
Do we have to suspend the rules? Or do you have to-
No, there's no rule. We could vote it we want. It's not a policy.
Okay.
We're just taking a vote.
Oh, I see. You don't.
But I think as a courtesy to members under any kind of a no surprise procedure is not to schedule a vote on the night that you first hear about something. Dr. Allison Ampe.
I was just going to ask if we had to suspend the policy.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Any other questions or comments on the motion? I will have some questions for Ms. Fox after the vote because they're not relevant to the vote, but I have some curiosity. Ms. Fox, do you have something else you'd like to add?
I'm happy to there were some questions raised that I would be happy to answer, but
Go
if
for
we
it.
don't have time, that's
No,
okay.
let's get them.
Okay, I just wanted to address your comment about the 1990 goal that's mentioned, or the 1990 baseline that's mentioned, related to the 2021 climate law, and that's what's said in the climate law. What DOER is doing is taking that and sort of applying it to this program and using the 2022 baseline so that we can have, all of the communities can have a starting point using the data that we have now. I think, I'm actually not familiar with what the records are for most communities going back to 1990, but we have a pretty robust data platform now, Mass Energy Insights, that allows us to see energy data for all of our buildings. So I suspect what they're doing is they're trying to just translate those goals into something that's a little bit more relevant to the now. I can learn more about why they chose 2022 if you'd like. I'm happy to follow up. Okay. And then I think there was a question also about the general concern about 2030 being too soon, and the sort of framing of will versus could. I think what this roadmap is saying is we're going to try. This is something that we're committed to trying to do, right? Because this is a target we've set as a community, and I think if we're serious about reaching that goal, we have to start moving toward it. And I think if we have to acknowledge that we're not able to reach that goal, I think that's another conversation, but we at least have to try. And so I think that's what this roadmap is doing, is saying, if we're committed to trying to get to that goal, here's how we do it. So do with that what you will.
Any other comments on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Abstain? 7-0, unanimous vote. Before you leave, Ms. Fox, this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. We're a 2 EV family. We installed our heat pumps a couple of years ago, and we've had a 20% reduction in our energy use. So I'm cheering this on. I'd love to get a discussion of your charging infrastructure, because I'm a condo resident.
Ooh.
And I do not have available charging at home, so I rely on public charging. Fortunately, I live across the street from the Russell Common lot. So one side question is, why is our parking enforcement vehicle charging in the public station? Don't we have charging at the police station?
That's a great question. We are working to well, thank you first of all for all of the changes you've made to your own home. We are working to expand charging infrastructure. I'm happy to circulate the more extended roadmap.
I would love to see that. I was going to ask directly for that
Yes.
discussion.
We do. There is a level 2 charger in the garage over at the police station that my understanding is that vehicle is supposed to use. So I'm not sure why they're occupying that public space so much, but I think you raise also an important point about charging for multifamily residences and condos who might not have access to charging or off-street parking. So I'm looking into a grant for on-street charging through the Mass CEC.
Is that similar to Melrose?
I love that pilot, yes, but unfortunately I asked the utility about that pilot and we can't do it here. They sort of suspended that. Other communities were able to do it, but it would be similar. It wouldn't be on the, that's a pilot where they
Melrose
did charging off of the lamp, off of the
cell phone and the
towers.
The charging thing comes down from the pole.
Yeah.
You know, it's wicked cool.
Yeah, so I'm looking into expanding public charging is the point, to address this very issue that you're raising, and I can speak to the police department about why that vehicle is occupying public.
And one other police question, because as an EV user, I can't, I take a look at what the police vehicles do, and they do a lot of idling, which burns a lot of gas. And if I'm sitting in my EV with the heat on, I'm consuming almost nothing in energy. I look at the police vehicles as being the most wonderful, low mileage, high impact, gas guzzling, energy saving, higher performance thing possible. Are we doing anything about police vehicles?
Yes, so there's a challenge, I think, with our emergency response vehicles and with pursuit vehicles for the police. There's some concern around the ability or the charging component, right? If that vehicle has to be responding 24/7, it can't stop to charge for many hours. I think some of this is perception and some of this is reality. And I know that a lot of those police vehicles are becoming hybrids, which is a great step. It's not all electric, which is where we want to go. But I think I was at a conference a couple weeks ago, and I know Cambridge is doing a lease pilot to figure out how to start to get staff comfortable with using EVs, how to get the officers more comfortable with the electric versions of these vehicles. There are also just not that many pursuit vehicles that are EVs yet on the market. There's a lot of equipment that needs to fit in those vehicles. So I think some of it is a market question, some of it is a use question, and also charging. So I think I'm working on all of these, learning how we can help police best adjust to that transition and plan for the infrastructure of that. Because I take your point. You're correct.
I've offered Officer Hogan and the chief an opportunity to drive my car. It is wicked fast. It will outperform in pursuit anything you got out there. We got a long agenda, and I'm just diverting, but I just wanted to get a couple of questions in while you were here, and I very much appreciate your work, and congratulations on getting a positive vote your first night out. Thank you.
Thank you all.
So we are now through the climate. We've done the donation. We are now to policy. Mr. Carden.
Thank you. So this policy actually, I'm expecting some comments, and we may need to revise it. But so in the transition from one chair to the other, I wasn't at the meeting where the policy was first discussed. The policy I submitted to town council to revise was one I got from you, Mr. Chair. But there were some other comments on the policy that are not incorporated into the draft that we have tonight. So we may need to do some more work depending on comments from the committee. The change from town council is to make the comments that are out of order to reference very, very vaguely the Constitution. But that's his recommendation because of a recent court case. That makes it a little bit harder on the chair to know what is allowed and not allowed under the Constitution, but that's part of the job. So that would be the main change to the policy as you see it before you tonight. But there is some more language in the MASC policy that talks about. We have some of that in some of our policy. For some reason, our policies don't match at all. Mm-hmm. So we have some language about it in our policy about what kind of topics mm-hmm. are in order and not in order. We can still limit the topics to things that the school committee controls, mm-hmm. And that's sort of implied in our policy, but not as specific mm-hmm. as in the MASC rules. So I think that's the one change that now that I've looked at it, that I would recommend. So I do think we'll take it back to policy, but open to hearing other comments on the draft that's before you.
I will take chair's privilege in saying that, yes, I agree with you that the MASC sample policy states that topics for discussion should be limited to those items within the school committee's scope of authority, and goes on with further language. Mm-hmm. Because I heard conversation about this and went to a session at the MASC conference. And that one paragraph in the model policy is sort of essential because under our policies right now, somebody can come in and for 3 minutes ask us why we're allowing Stop and Shop to be next door. Can't we get rid of them and put in Market Basket? Right. And we're stuck for 3 minutes of that. And clearly that has nothing to do with our ability as a school department in order to function. So I think that adding that part is important. The other thing that I'd like to see us think, two other things I'd like to think about. Number one is that our policy right now says that at the discretion of the chair, somebody can go and do a PowerPoint or some other visual presentation, which I think is problematic on a lot of levels, both in terms of the time consideration, does it work, and if we give control to somebody else rather than having the presentation in-house and us controlling it, we could be broadcasting all sorts of nonsense because we're giving access to our outside feed. So I'd like that to be looked at. And the third thing that I'd like to look at is in the exhibit policy, is that we allow people up until 6 o'clock to notify Ms. Diggins of their intention to speak. I think to be reasonable with our administrative secretary, that should be at the close of business at 4 p.m., but perhaps enable a sign up for people who show up here to sign up if there's additional time beyond the people who signed up in advance. So those are my suggestions.
Okay.
And it's up to the Policies Committee to think about any suggestions that come from here and then come back to us. But I do appreciate the legal language suggested by Town Council. Even though it's difficult for the chair, I think that you can make a reasonable case for it. And now that I have hogged time of the committee, anyone else would like to comment on this? Dr. Allison Ampe.
I would prefer the language as it's directed, as the MASC policy has it, than what Town Council suggested. I think it's more clear and would be easier to follow.
The policy says the chair of the meeting, after warning, reserves the right to terminate speech which is not constitutionally protected. That sentence, number 4 in this MASC sample?
Yeah. It gives more information. Because it constitutes true threats, they are likely to provoke a violent reaction and cause a breach of peace or incitement to lawless conduct and stuff. It doesn't just say, it doesn't just kind of wave at the Constitution and say unless. It's giving.
Provided it's something within our jurisdiction.
Yeah.
So I think that having that jurisdictional argument in there is important too, because there are some things that have been said in this room in public comment that I could not stop because we don't have the policy to say it, but if we have that clause pertaining to topics of discussion under the jurisdiction of the school committee, I'd have a little more control. Yeah,
right,
go ahead.
and that's why I had put this policy towards policy. I asked the policy committee last year to look at this because I was concerned about that exact thing. Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else before we go send the dispatches back to policies? And as this is a first read, if it comes back from policies and we like it, we can do it because we've already got our first read and we've talked about it. So if we've got 4 votes to approve it after it comes back from policy committee, again, we can go and enact it. Any other questions or comments under this agenda item? Hearing none. Superintendent's evaluation materials. Well, this is a peculiar thing that we do in evaluating the superintendent because we are also operating under the constraints of the open meeting and public records laws. So that we are all doing this blindly. None of us see what each other are doing. They're sending it off to the chair of the committee, in this case me, who concatenates it, compiles it, and puts it in one single document. At the last year's meeting, what we did was, under the excellent leadership of Dr. Allison Ampe, is that there are comments within the document. Legally, we can only repeat what we've written right now so that we can go around the room after I give the overall discussion of this. And you may read any portion of your own comments as you so choose. But to start off, I'm going to go and do a review of the evaluation just to summarize it. And I think that one of the things that I would comment on is that among the members of the committee, we more or less converged very well. There was not a lot of variance in what we've had to say. Step 1 in this process was to assess progress towards goals. There was a student learning goal, professional practice goal, and district improvement goals. The professional practice goal for this year or for the evaluation year, which is 23-24, was to build capacity of myself and other APS leaders to use frequent informal and formal feedback from our community staff and students to inform response to conflict and thoughtful and inclusive design of initiative. The professional practice goal is rated on did not meet, some progress, significant progress, met or exceeded. There was one significant, some progress, 4 significant progress, and 2 met. And significant progress is sort of the sweet spot on this, in my opinion. Number 2, student learning goal. Student learning goal, close opportunity and achievement gaps for students through sustained focus on instructional practice and expansion of inclusive classroom systems and structures. Student learning goal, 5 significant progress, 2 met. 3, there were 2 district improvement goals. Goal 1 was to expand and improve two-way engagement with families and opportunities for APS family learning and connection. The second one was expand understanding of deeper learning principles and provide opportunities for deeper learning experiences for all APS staff and students. For district improvement goals, there was 1 some progress, 3 significant progress, 2 met, 1 exceeded. Then we go into the ratings on the 4 standards, which, by the way, this is consistent with how school administrators are rated, so that principals and other administrators in the district have a similar ratings scheme. For instructional leadership, the education leader promotes the learning and growth of all students and the success of all staff by cultivating a shared vision that makes powerful teaching and learning the central focus of schooling. The rating categories for this are unsatisfactory, needs improvement, proficient, and exemplary. The superintendent received 5 proficient, 2 exemplary. Standard 2, the education leader promotes the learning and growth of all students and the success of all staff by ensuring a safe, efficient, and effective learning environment, using resources to implement appropriate curriculum, staffing, and scheduling. Standard 2, 7 proficients. Standard 3, family and community engagement. The education leader promotes the learning and growth of all students and the success of all staff through effective partnerships with families, community organizations, and other stakeholders that support the mission of the district and schools. Standard 3, 5 proficient, 2 exemplary. Standard 4, professional culture. The education leader promotes the learning and growth of all students and the success of all staff by nurturing and sustaining a district-wide culture of reflective practice, high expectations, and continuous learning for staff. Ratings of 5 proficient, 2 exemplary. Step 3, rate overall summative performance based on steps 1 and 2 ratings, 7 proficient. All members have rated our superintendent proficient. This document has been shared with the superintendent. The motion will be to forward this document to the Human Resources Officer for transmittal of appropriate ratings to the state as required by regulation.
So moved.
That's a motion by Ms. Morgan, second by Dr. Allison Ampe. Now is your chance. I will go around the room and invite the other members to read anything from the comments that they have placed in this evaluation document. Ms. Exton, would you like to comment? Mr. Carden?
No, thank you.
Dr. Allison Ampe, Mr. Thielman?
No, thank you.
Ms. Gittleson?
No, thank you.
And Ms. Morgan?
No, thank you. But I don't think that should come as an indicator that there is any degree of disengagement, dissatisfaction, or other related to the performance of the superintendent. It's just, it is 9:25, and I don't want to, can I just say, I think we're really lucky that we're not here having to say, I'm going to pick these sentences to read. We're not doing that. And I think that speaks perhaps more to this evaluation than if we all did an interpretive reading and dance of this document. So I just don't want it to be taken as that there's, yes.
And at the conclusion of this meeting, this document will be made available in Nova so people of the community can evaluate us in our evaluation of the superintendent. And now on the motion before us, all in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Opposed? That is a unanimous vote. Now I'll give the superintendent a chance to comment.
I think she should say, sorry. I forgot we have rules here.
I will not be singing or dancing, but I will say thank you. I do a lot of evaluations using a very similar rubric. I know how much work it is. I got a lot of very specific and helpful and useful feedback from the committee, and I will be using that to develop goals moving forward. And I'm grateful for the time that it takes, because I know it takes quite a bit.
Thank you. Superintendent's update. Go ahead, Dr. Elson-Ampe. I didn't expect any further comments. Go ahead.
It's confusing when to speak during this, because supposedly anything we say is considered part of the evaluation.
So now we're done with it.
Yeah,
so
well,
we can just
that's
talk
part
about
of why I
anything
was
that we like.
waiting.
Sorry, so
Anyway,
go ahead.
I just wanted to point out for our vast public audience that we also have the chance to elaborate and expound and explain and go into detail with the superintendent during our meetings, monthly or however often, on the things that we talk about in the evaluation, so that if she has any questions or we have any further concerns, that is a point where we can do this. And that is, in my opinion, a more effective way of conveying concerns and kudos too, than this formulaic interpretive dance. So that's all.
Okay. Anything else, anyone else on this agenda item? Okay, then we can go to superintendent's update.
Okay, I will be brief. We already talked about the fact that we're in an advanced learner pilot at length. We went today. It was great. We will be back with more updates. And we're focusing on middle school math. The Arlington Youth Counseling Center opened its annual appeal this past week. Community members can donate to AYCC through the appeal, and the link is there on the slide. We partner with AYCC extensively. They offer a lot of services to our families and students, both in the schools as well as out in the community, and also is available to a lot of other community members. So we wanted to share this. We'll also share it on some of our district socials. We have a liaison with AYCC who also shared this with us and wanted to make sure the community and the committee was aware. We are adjusting financial assistance procedures for some of our affiliate programs to better align with some of the practices in the schools. I won't say that we're at full alignment. I think there are even some tweaks based on comments I've gotten from committee members over the last couple of days that I want to go in and make to a couple of these procedural documents that I shared in your materials. But there are some significant adjustments to the financial aid opportunities for Arlington community education, opening a more availability for families who are experiencing any kind of income insecurity, and allowing a little bit more latitude on families qualifying. It used to be that we would use free and reduced lunch applications to determine eligibility for income-based scholarships or tuition assistance, and that's not a great measure anymore, so partially because we just provide free lunch and it's a lengthy application. So there are other data tools we can use for this, particularly the low-income designation, which is provided to us by the state, and access to other public services. And if families are getting any access to any of those public services, they can provide documentation of that, and we can allow for tuition assistance in various programs. So I will say I think the AASP procedure, it's pretty vague. It offers a lot of latitude. There are a couple of things I want to adjust in the language there, but it's probably the closest aligned with the practices of the public schools because we do take instances on a case-by-case basis. Any kind of tuition remission is usually approved by my office or one of the assistant superintendent's offices or cabinet offices before it is provided, and that is how we're operating with Arlington After School at this point. We're really taking into strong consideration also with after-school programming whether or not participation in after-school is going to have a significant positive impact on the school day. And so that consideration plays a role if it's going to help with absenteeism, for example. If it's going to get the kiddos to school, if they are able to access aftercare, then we'll make exceptions or offer assistance if it's going to make that big of a difference for the family. So we're trying to give ourselves as much latitude to make decisions as we can while being clear about what the procedures are that will allow for tuition assistance. And so I wanted to share those with the committee because it's work that's ongoing, and I'm happy to take comments. These are internal procedures, so they can be adjusted, and we'll continue to make adjustments, and if there's interest in me resharing them, I'm happy to do that. We've received some competitive grant awards recently, and I will share 3 of them. So in promoting safe and healthy learning environments, we support, there's options for that grant, and we chose option 1, supporting mental health and well-being of newcomer and homeless students in the amount of $40,000. I don't have details on how each of these was proposed to be spent with me tonight, but I'm happy to get more details if you're interested. We got a hate crimes prevention grant in the amount of $50,000. A lot of that's going to go towards professional development for our educators, and McKinney-Vento Homeless Education Grant. This was a competitive grant award from the federal government in the amount of $20,000, which will allow us to offer more things like tuition assistance, transportation assistance, and other benefits for our families who might suffer with housing insecurity. So also we have a couple new central office staff who have joined us over the last month. Claire Nakamori has joined us as an enrollment engagement specialist. Joe Gratton has joined us in the human resources office as a human resources specialist and has come to us from a town office. So we're happy to welcome him into the Arlington Public Schools. Enrollments are, did I send you all? Yes. I sent you all enrollments, and they're included in your materials. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions for the superintendent, Mr. Carden?
Just a comment. The grants, like the donation earlier tonight, need to come to us to be accepted. They can be put in the consent agenda, but please make sure that happens because we've fallen out of that for some reason.
Okay. I'll adjust that with Mr. Gorski.
Dr. Allison Appy.
For the superintendent, I'm glad that we're addressing the community education tuition assistance. 2 comments. One, I think it'd be good if it's more clearly written that they only need to supply one of the paperwork, because right now if you read it and you read it kind of quickly, it looks like you have to supply all these things, and I just go like, yeah, no. And second, shouldn't mass health enrollment be part of, one of the things that would count? Okay.
Yeah, that usually flags the low income.
Right.
So they would qualify under that. If they qualify as low income, and mass health is one of the things that will do that because of how low income gets calculated, then we don't have to ask for any of that documentation because we have data that demonstrates that low income indicator. So the nice thing about mass health is it will hit that. And so we'll see that, and so we won't even have to ask for documentation.
Right, but we need to be sure that the parents know that
also
they're already qualified, because that's, again, you could look at this and not know that because you only get free and reduced lunch if you, at this point, you're only getting it if you have a reason to need it, except we don't even have the reasons now. So anyway.
In other words, if you have mass health, you have the name of the child who is receiving the mass health benefit. That computer talks to the DESI computer, which flags the student as a low-income student.
Right, I know.
Yeah.
Just
Ms. Morgan.
So I have a Mass Health kid in my house who is not low income. So there are kids who qualify for Mass Health who are not low income. I don't know whether or not, I mean, I'm not going to take a position on whether they should receive tuition assistance from ACE, but they're not a full overlap. So kids who are adopted from foster care qualify for Mass Health until they turn 18.
Right, and but all students who are low income qualify for Mass Health. So it's, yeah, I'll have to look at whether that works.
It's not very many kids. There's
Right,
like 5 of them
it's
in the
usually
whole
used as a, as an indication of low income or for other reasons. Anyway, that's fine. I'm just saying.
We'll look into it, I'll look into it.
Okay. Any other questions or comments under superintendent's report? Now we go to the beloved consent agenda. All items listed with an asterisk are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a member of the committee so requests, in which event the item will be considered in its normal sequence. Warrant 25112, November 19th, $1,044,926.09. Warrant 25132, December 5th, $1,128,487.20, as well as the draft school committee minutes for November 14th, 2024. Motion to approve the agenda, consent agenda by Dr. Allison Ampe, seconded by Ms. Gittleson. All in favor? Opposed? That's a unanimous vote. Moving on to subcommittee liaison reports and announcements. Budget, Dr. Allison Ampe.
Budget will be meeting next Tuesday at 8:45, and we'll have many things to discuss.
Community Relations, Ms. Exton.
No report.
CIAA, Curriculum Instruction Assessment Accountability, Ms. Morgan.
We are meeting on the 18th at 3:30 and also have many things to discuss.
Facilities, Mr. Thielman.
We meet on January 8th at 5 o'clock, right, Liz?
Much more civilized than the 8 a.m. meetings. Policies and Procedures, Mr. Carden.
I'm going to schedule an 8 a.m. meeting.
So moved.
He's not on the committee.
Yeah, we'll look to schedule a meeting probably in early January at this point.
Arlington High School Building Committee, Mr. Thielman.
The floor is down in the gym. It's going great, and there's really we meet on December 10th.
And we'll be able to bring our beloved basketball team home from Waltham in February.
Yeah, well, it's
Well,
season will be over by then.
Really?
Sorry.
They don't go on after February break?
Well, I don't think so. No,
That's a fall sport.
No, it's
Oh, basketball?
Basketball's a winter sport.
It's a
but
winter sport.
No, you're right.
But their season usually is over by around February break. Maybe they'll have.
Of course, they're going to make the playoffs, so, you know.
I don't know. I don't know yet. We'll talk to the superintendent and the principal, and they'll tell us what they're going to do. But, you know, yeah, we're doing well.
Do we have any liaison reports?
Yes.
Ms. Exton.
So I am the CPAC liaison, and they are working on their annual survey, and they reached out to me to ask if there are any questions that we as committee members would like them to include on their survey. So if you have any thoughts, you can share them with me, and I will pass them along to the CPAC.
Okay. Any other liaison reports? Seeing none, announcements. Future agenda items, I want to note that we will be looking at a vote pertaining to the Harvard Model Congress at our next meeting. Ms. Diggins, has the committee already been apprised of the documentation for that? Okay, I thought I saw that.
It'll be in Novus for next meeting.
Okay, be looking for that.
Can we request future agenda items during this agenda
You
item?
certainly can.
Perfect, good. So we got the annual report and the lab financials from Dr. Holman as part of her superintendent report, which was great. We haven't had lab here for a while, so I'm wondering if we could invite them to come to see us. I don't know if you want to do that or how quickly we can get them in, but that would be something it would be nice to do. I learned a lot when they've come before. So. So.
That sounds like a good thing to put on the agenda. Dr. Allison Ampe.
Yeah, as part of that, I'd be curious to know, they said that they haven't done, credits or whatever we have for the last couple of years. And it looked like they had a surplus, but I couldn't follow the financial report well enough to understand where all the surplus money was going and whether, should we be getting credits or what, so.
Also, while we're on the topic of outside agencies educating Arlington students, do we have an interest in inviting Minuteman to come along to talk to us? Seeing no enthusiasm for that, I will not put that on the agenda. Do we have anything to do in executive session?
I think really short, probably.
We will do a very short executive session. We do not contemplate coming back. That's for the strategy for bargaining, okay? So I'm going to be asking for a motion to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with union personnel to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with AAA, that's it, it's just AAA.
Second.
And I have to fulfill the next part of the statement. As an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares, that language is important, that's the legal language. Motion by Mr. Thielman, I think I heard him, second by Dr. Allison Ampe. This needs to be a roll call. Ms. Exton?
Yes.
Mr. Carden?
Yes.
Dr. Allison Ampe?
Yes.
Mr. Thielman?
Yes.
Ms. Gittleson?
Yes.
Ms. Morgan?
Yes.
Chair votes in the affirmative, 7-0. We are in executive session. Thank you.
ACMi productions are only made possible with your support. Visit patreon.com/ACMi to learn how you can help.